Chapter 395. In the battle with Fang Qishao, Chu Xiu seemed to have lost, but in fact he had gained something. The heaven's sun gazing at air could only have an obvious breakthrough under this kind of pressure. If Fang Qishao was willing to be Chu Xiu's sparring partner, Chu Xiu was even confident that he could cultivate the heaven's sun gazing at air to a proficient level in a short period of time. But obviously, this was not going to happen. Now, Fang Qishao was already very unhappy. Although he had won in the end, he felt like he had suffered a loss. After the younger generation's arena competition was over, the prizes were not distributed on the spot. Instead, they were going to be distributed to everyone after the World Sword Sect Conference ended. Next, it was time for the martial Dao masters to spar with each other. Everyone was excited about it. After all, for most of the warriors present, it was very difficult for them to see martial arts grandmaster-level experts fight. Even if they could not understand it as long as they saw it, it would be enough for them to brag for a long time. Han Tingyi and the other people from the 5 major sword sects looked at each other. They walked down the high platform at the same time and stood in the arena. Everyone present instantly started discussing in low voices when they saw these people. These people were all renowned grandmasters of the sword Dao from the 5 major sword sections. The beautiful woman in palace attire from the Yunnu Palace was the current palace master of the Yunnu Palace, Moonshadow Star Mark Lin Fenya. Although she was not famous in the martial arts world, she was not small either. Of course, her fame was mostly because of her identity as the palace master of the Yunnu Palace. Lin Fenya was ranked 25th on the honor list. Her ranking was even higher than Han Tingyi in the Sword Hut. But in reality, the people of the martial arts world also knew that Lin Fenya's ranking on the honor list was actually somewhat high. With her strength, it was difficult for her to even enter the top 30. Now, she was ranked 25th because of her identity as the palace master of the Yunnu Palace. More importantly, it was because she was one of the few women on the honor list that her ranking was so high. The martial artist with 7 swords on his back was the master of the Hidden Sword Villa, Heartless Sword Tomb, Qing Tingshan. He originally carried 10 swords, but the other 3 had been broken. He had broken 3 swords and killed 3 people. Of the 3 people who had died, one was a murderer who had become sworn enemies with the Hidden Sword Villa in the past, while the other 2 were powerful figures of the demonic Dao. Qing Tingshan's strength was not weak among the martial Dao masters. However, the Hidden Sword Villa had been on the decline recently, and Qing Tingshan was not a woman, so naturally, he did not receive any preferential treatment. Therefore, he was only ranked 33rd on the honor roll, not even in the top 30. The white-robed warrior from Sword King City was the first seat of Sword King City's Xingjian Hall, Formless Sword, by Qian. He was ranked 30th on the Wind Cloud list, second only to Han Tingyi of the Sword Hut. Among the 4 major sword halls of Sword King City, the Xingjian Hall specialized in sword techniques. However, Bai Qian had already transformed his sword techniques into a realm where incorporeal triumphed over corporeal, so his nickname was Formless Sword. From this, one could see Bai Qian's terrifying cultivation in the way of the sword. The last person was the white-robed, barefooted young man with a broken sword mark on his forehead from the Windcloud Sword Tomb. In fact, among the 5 martial Dao masters, he had the most powerful background. The Windcloud Sword Tomb was a place where swords were hidden. Legend had it that in ancient times, when some sword Dao masters were on the verge of death, they would bury their swords in a place. That place was the Windcloud Sword Tomb according to the customs of the Jianghu. The swords of the sword Dao masters were definitely extremely precious weapons, or even divine weapons. Therefore, the disciples or servants of the sword Dao masters would spontaneously build huts around the Windcloud Sword Tomb to protect the divine weapons and treasured swords in the tomb. Later on, as the number of people guarding the Windcloud Sword Tomb increased, their descendants also multiplied, and they joined together to form a sword Dao sect. It could be said that the Windcloud Sword Tomb was the inheritance of countless sword Dao masters in the past. It could be said that the Windcloud Sword Tomb was the strongest among the 5 major sword sects. Moreover, even if the Windcloud Sword Tomb's experts of a certain generation withered, no one dared to provoke it, because no one knew what kind of mysterious or evil existence Windcloud Sword Tomb would invite from the place where swords were hidden. Legend had it that the Windcloud Sword Tomb suffered a blow more than 2,000 years ago. The entire Windcloud Sword Tomb was left with an old martial Dao master. Therefore, an enemy sect came to the Windcloud Sword Tomb. The enemy had 6 martial Dao masters, and the sect's experts gathered, wanting to completely destroy the Windcloud Sword Tomb. In the end, the old martial Dao master used his own blood as a sacrifice to invite a sword spirit that was formed from the Windcloud Sword Tomb's countless killing intents. It actually slaughtered the 6 martial Dao masters. Although the martial Dao master of the Windcloud Sword Tomb exhausted his blood and passed away in less than 3 days, it also let the entire underworld know that the Windcloud Sword Tomb was not to be trifled with. Even if there was only one person left, no one knew what other trump cards he had. The white-clothed barefooted young man had a very mysterious origin. Legend had it that outsiders couldn't enter the Windcloud Sword Tomb's land of buried swords. To be precise, only warriors with chi could enter. As long as they approached, they would trigger the formation. Because the land of buried swords was connected to a barren forest, a wild wolf entered the land of buried swords with a baby boy in its mouth. It threw the baby boy next to a broken sword and fed him with wolf milk every day. The baby boy didn't cry or make a fuss. He was only discovered by the people of the Windcloud Sword Tomb when he was 3 years old. For a time, the entire Windcloud Sword Tomb was shaken. For some reason, the baby boy seemed to have formed a strange connection with the broken sword beside him. The broken sword's spirit had dissipated, and a new spirit was born, turning it into a new god weapon. Later, the baby was raised by the Windcloud Sword Tomb and accepted as a disciple. Even the deceased previous leader of the Windcloud Sword Tomb, the old sword god Guemo, took him as a disciple and taught him swordsmanship. Because he didn't have parents and didn't even know what his surname was, Guemo named him Yanji because the broken sword that accompanied him was called Yanji. Yanji also became the most special existence in the Windcloud Sword Tomb. He was born with a god weapon, and that god weapon was connected to his flesh and blood. When he cultivated to the unity of heaven and man realm, the god weapon could fuse with his body. No matter how long he lived, he could guarantee that he wouldn't age. It was very miraculous. Yanji was ranked 23rd on the Windcloud Sword Tomb, but everyone in the underworld said that Yanji's ranking was definitely higher than that. He didn't fight many times, but every time he did, he would easily defeat his opponents. Under the broken sword, there was no one who survived. Among the 5 people present, Yanji could be said to be the strongest and the most unfathomable. If there were no accidents, the champion of this arena competition should be Yanji. However, although the 5 of them were going to compete on the arena, those who were familiar with the inside story knew that they were just putting on a show for the Devil Dao. The Good Fortune Heavenly Demon flag didn't have much meaning to the 5 great sword sects. They wouldn't fight to the death for this thing. The only goal of the 5 of them going on the arena was to lure the Devil Dao to attack. Han Tingyi said to everyone present in a deep voice, "Everyone, the second round has begun. I will first show my incompetence. Our 5 great sword sects will exchange pointers with each other, so we won't waste time with one-on-one games. The 5 of us will fight together to determine the winner." As he spoke, Han Tingyi and the other 4 began to fight, immediately attracting the attention of everyone present. It was indeed rare to see 5 sword masters fight, but Chu Xiu only took a few glances before losing interest. These people were really acting. They weren't paying attention at all. Although the 5 of them fought with sword chi and astral energy, in reality, the 5 of them didn't even use 10% of their power. Han Tingyi didn't use the powerful sword intent of the sword hut at all. Cheng Tingshan only used one of his 7 swords, and he didn't use the white submerged invisible sword either. Instead, he used many sword moves that looked gorgeous but were just for show. Lin Fengya was the same. She didn't use the natural power of the Yu Maiden swordplay. It wasn't even as good as Yan Fian's previous attack. The one who was the most outrageous was Yanji. Everyone wanted to see how he would fuse the Yanji sword into his body. In the end, he did not even draw his sword. He condensed his true chi and used his sword fingers to attack. It was really outrageous. Of course, for the wandering martial artists, Han Tingyi and the others were already fighting fiercely enough. They enjoyed watching. After about 2 hours of chaotic fighting, the 5 of them finally decided the winner. The final winner was actually Cheng Tingshan of the Hidden Sword Villa. Seeing this result, everyone present curled their lips. They really didn't pay attention. How could such a result come out? However, the people from the 5 major sword sects didn't care about the discussions below. Han Tingyi cupped his hands and said, "Everyone, the outcome of our 5 major sword sects spar has been decided. Villa Master Cheng of the Hidden Sword Villa has deep attainments in the way of the sword and is ahead of us. Is there anyone else who wants to come up and spar? The winner can take away the demonic creation flag." The martial arts masters below all raised their eyebrows, but no one said a word. They all knew that this time, the people from the 5 major sword sects wanted to lure out the people from the demonic path. They didn't object to this, but they also couldn't be bothered to get involved. So naturally, no one spoke at this time. However, at this time, a hoarse old voice came from below. "Can your 5 major sword sects act any more fake? This kid from the Hidden Sword Villa has no attainments in the way of the sword. He carries so many swords all day like a peacock spreading its tail. Doesn't he know that the more cocky a person is, the faster they die? Who is 10 Directions Divine Sword, Qing Nanbei to you? Is he your grandfather or your great-grandfather? That old guy also likes to carry 10 swords on his back and run around in the pugilistic world. In the end, I broke his neck and broke 9 of his swords. The remaining one looked good, so I made it into a door bolt. It's still hanging on the door of my cottage." Chapter 396. As the hoarse, old voice rang out, a young man in white with a jade-like face walked out from the crowd, gently fanning himself with a folding fan. However, his steps did not seem like that of a young man, but more like that of an old man. Han Tingyi and the others immediately became serious. He was finally here. However, Cheng Tingshan's expression was ugly because this man was insulting their Hidden Sword Mountain Villa. Cheng Nanbei was not his grandfather, nor was he his great-grandfather. Instead, he was an ancestor of the Hidden Sword Mountain Villa's Cheng clan. He was someone of the same generation as his great-grandfather, but he was killed by the demonic Dao in his early years. However, that was more than 200 years ago, and Cheng Tingshan was only in his 50s. At that time, even his father hadn't been born yet. Cheng Tingshan had only occasionally seen a description of it in the family tree. How could he remember it so clearly? However, this man in front of him said that he was the one who killed his ancestor. Didn't that mean that this man had lived for at least 200 years? Who was this man? Cheng Tingshan thought about it and suddenly thought of something. He suddenly shouted in shock, "Jade Face Heavenly Demon! You're Jade Face Heavenly Demon, Wuxia. You're not dead yet." As soon as this was said, the crowd immediately went into an uproar. Although more than 200 years had passed, the reputation of the 9 Mountains' 5 great demons was still very famous. Wuxia twisted his neck. His appearance changed from that of a handsome young man to that of an old man with a face full of wrinkles. "Tsk tisk, it's not easy. I didn't expect someone to still remember me. It seems that your Hidden Sword Mountain Villa still holds a grudge. Could it be that you've been thinking about how to kill me all these years?" Han Tingyi and the others all frowned. It seemed that they had really provoked the demonic Dao this time. Even an old demonic Dao monster like Wuxia had come out. On the other side, Cheng Tingshan's eyes revealed a hint of coldness. He said, "The people of my Hidden Sword Mountain Villa will not die in vain. All these years, my Hidden Sword Mountain Villa did not make a move because we thought you were dead. I didn't expect you to still be alive. However, it's a pity that you could have continued to live for a while. In the end, you voluntarily jumped out to die. You can't blame me for this." As soon as he finished speaking, the 5 long swords behind Cheng Tingshan were unsheathed at the same time. Violent earth energy gathered on the swords, forming a sword formation that enveloped Wuxia. At the same time, Cheng Tingshan held a long sword in each of his hands. He used 2 sword techniques at the same time and attacked Wuxia. In the past, the 9 Mountains' 5 great sky fiends were indeed famous. Even the hidden sword villa's ancestor had died at Wei Shuya's hands. However, when Cheng Tingshan faced Wei Shuya, he was still confident that he could defeat him. The reason was simple. Wei Shuya was old. In the Jianghu, it was not the case that the older one was, the stronger one would be. If that was the case, then everyone should stop fighting and find a place to go into seclusion. Let's see who lived the longest and who would be the king of the Jianghu. No matter how arrogant you were in the pugilistic world, you couldn't resist the ravages of time. Cheng Tingshan was only in his 50s at the moment. For a martial Dao master, he was in the prime of his life, when his qi and blood were at their strongest. What about Wei Shuya? He was already old, completely old. In fact, even if Wei Shuya didn't attack him after a while, he would probably die of old age. There was no need for Cheng Tingshan to be afraid of such an old thing with declining qi and blood. However, before his sword formation could land, he saw Wei Shuya yawn lightly. However, this yawn was like a demonic sound piercing through the ears. A huge sound wave suddenly erupted, taking away one's soul. Almost in the blink of an eye, the sword formation that Cheng Tingshan had set up was completely destroyed. Cheng Tingshan's eyes revealed a look of horror. This old thing was already more than 200 years old. How could he still be so powerful? However, before he could react, he saw Wei Shuya stretch out a hand and suddenly press down. In an instant, the surrounding qi of heaven and earth all turned into monstrous demonic qi, condensing into a giant hand that was hundreds of feet long. It was like a mountain with 5 fingers, crushing down on Cheng Tingshan. Demonic devouring myriad worlds, sky-covering palm. Before the palm energy landed, Cheng Tingshan had already spat out a mouthful of blood from the terrifying pressure. A few days ago at the Bone Tree Villa, Wei Shuya had also attacked Mountain Ghost. However, Mountain Ghost was a member of the moon-worshipping cult after all. The bright demons and the hidden demons were still preparing to join forces. Of course, they would not fall out with each other. Therefore, Wei Shuya still held back when he attacked. He only taught Mountain Ghost a little and did not go all out. However, it was different against Cheng Tingshan now. Wei Shuya was going to kill him. At that moment, Cheng Tingshan looked at the giant demonic qi hand in shock and said hoarsely, "True fire spirit refinement. You actually broke through to the true fire spirit refinement." It was not easy to step into the martial Dao Grandmaster realm, but breaking through to the true fire spirit refinement was even more difficult. Back when Wei Shuya was still at his peak, he had not even reached the true fire spirit refinement. Now that Wei Shuya was old and had basically no chance of advancing further, how did he reach his current realm? However, there was no time for Cheng Tingshan to think at this moment. If the palm landed, he would probably be seriously injured even if he did not die. At that moment, Han Tingyi and the others who were standing behind Cheng Tingshan also came to his rescue in time. After all, they were all standing on the same side. Han Tingyi unsheathed the long sword in his hand with one hand. The seemingly ordinary redwood scabbard hid a dazzling long sword, the vacant sword. As Han Tingyi unsheathed the vacant sword in his hand, all the power in the world condensed into sword momentum and met Wei Shuya's palm. At that moment, he slashed out with his sword, which was also the world. The white-clothed, barefooted Yanji extended his index finger and pointed it between his eyebrows. The golden broken sword mark shone brightly and a golden broken sword materialized from illusion and emerged from within Yanji's body. As he pointed his finger forward, the broken sword whizzed towards the demonic palm in midair. However, the golden broken sword was surrounded by a terrifyingly powerful sword aura. It extended for dozens of feet and its power was incomparably great. A loud noise was heard, and Han Tingyi and the other 2 took a step back. The 3 of them worked together and barely managed to block Wei Shuya's palm. One could imagine how terrifying Wei Shuya was at that moment. Looking at those people, Wei Shuya's old face revealed a cold expression. The juniors are useless. They can't even withstand a single blow. To the others present, Han Tingyi and the others were seniors in the pugilistic world and unattainable martial Dao masters. However, to an old antique like Wei Shuya, they were genuine juniors. After all, when he was dominating the pugilistic world, these people were not even born yet. However, at that moment, a majestic voice suddenly sounded. Wuxia, you said that they can't withstand a single blow. How about I do it now? I heard that you have the best relationship with the Crimson Blood Demon among the 5 Sky Fiends of Ninth Sky Mountain. I didn't believe it at first. When I destroyed Ninth Sky Mountain, I wanted to kill you. However, the Crimson Blood Demon risked his life to stop me. He didn't retreat even after I killed 9 of his blood goo avatars. In the end, I shattered his heart meridian with my sword and bought you time to escape. Otherwise, do you think you would still be alive today? Do you think you can show off your power in front of the 5 major sword sects? The Crimson Blood Demon used his life to buy you a chance to live, but you didn't cherish it. What? Have you finally lived enough? As the voice faded, an old man in a golden python robe walked down from the high platform. He had a long sword hanging from his waist, which was as red as fire. What was shocking was that his feet were completely suspended in the air, as if there were invisible steps below him. This move was called the Sky Suspension Ladder. In fact, most warriors at the Unity of Heaven and Man realm could do it. They used their spiritual chi to temporarily support their body, which would create such a mysterious effect. However, this old man was different. No one could sense a trace of spiritual chi fluctuations from his body. Every time he took a step, the power of heaven and earth automatically flowed into his feet, providing him with support. It was simply terrifying. All the cultivators below were dumbfounded. Who was this person? However, from the tone of this person, it was obvious that he was an older expert from the same generation as Wuxia. He had participated in the battle to kill the 5 sky demons of the 9 Heavens Mountain and had even killed a sky demon. Among the young warriors present, they naturally paid attention to the Longhu list. They had naturally heard of the Fengyan list, but they really didn't know much about these things that happened hundreds of years ago. However, grandmasters like Xiahou were very familiar with the matters of the Jianghu. Almost instantly, they guessed the identity of this old man. They said in shock, "It's the king of Jiangnan, Du Gu Li." Du Gu Li's nickname was the king of Jiangnan. This king was not an honorific title like Sword Venerable or Sword Saint. He was indeed a king in the past. 200 years ago, other than the northern Yan, western Chu, and eastern Qi, there were some small countries, such as the Wei Kingdom, which was the predecessor of the Wei County. Du Gu Li was a king in the state of Liang. He was even the elder brother of the emperor of the state of Liang. Back then, Du Gu Li was actually the crown prince of the state of Liang. However, he was obsessed with swordsmanship. He gave up the position of crown prince to his younger brother and became an idle king to practice swordsmanship. He even traveled the Jianghu to seek advice from swordsmanship experts. Later on, Du Gu Li joined the Sword King city to practice swordsmanship in seclusion. He was once the first seat of the Sword King city's combat sword hall. Later on, he became an elder of the Sword King city. However, after the state of Liang was destroyed by the northern Yan, Du Gu Li became a loner. He even went to the northern Yan royal family to seek revenge. He single-handedly slaughtered the northern Yan army, one of the 5 armies of the state of northern Yan. He killed several generals of the northern Yan army. In the end, he was seriously injured by an expert of the northern Yan army and fled. Du Gu Li was quite famous 200 years ago. One could even say that he was a fanatic. If it was anyone else, even if their own country was destroyed by the northern Yan, they wouldn't have the guts to challenge the northern Yan dynasty. Even if the entire Sword King city came, it would be useless. However, Du Gu Li dared to single-handedly kill his way to the northern Yan kingdom to seek revenge. Not many people had this kind of courage. Chapter 397. The 5 great sword sects had planned for a long time for today's battle. They were not afraid of the people from the demonic path coming. They were only afraid that the demonic path would not come. Thus, the 5 great sword sects had brought out their true trump cards. There was more than one person like Du Gu Li. Following Du Gu Li's appearance, 2 more figures descended from the sky. One of them was dressed in a green Confucian robe. He had the appearance of a refined and handsome middle-aged man. A bamboo flute hung from his left waist and a green short sword hung from his right. His every movement seemed to blend into the surroundings and gave off a very strange feeling of nature. Seeing this person, everyone present did not need to guess. This person was the leader of the Forgetful Sword Hut, the Xiaoxiang Sword Rain, Shen Baochen, who was ranked 5th on the Wind and Cloud list. He was also a genius who had stunned the Jianghu. Legend had it that Shen Baochen started learning the sword at the age of 10. Every time he reached a new realm, he would challenge warriors one realm higher than him. Before reaching the Unity of Heaven realm, Shen Baochen had challenged warriors from the Forgetful Sword Hut. After reaching the Unity of Heaven realm, Shen Baochen had actually challenged a famous grandmaster of the sword in the Jianghu. He had crossed a large realm and defeated him. He had even made the grandmaster break his own sword and admit that he was not as good as Shen Baochen. It could be said that ever since Shen Baochen had stepped into the Jianghu, he had only done two things: cultivate and challenge. Shen Baochen rarely fought, but when he did, he would not lose. Those who had been defeated by Shen Baochen had said that Shen Baochen's sword was a sword that made people despair. Compared to Shen Baochen, the other person was someone that the people present could not see through. It was an unkempt old man. He wore a gray robe and the original color could not be seen. His hair and beard were also white and messy. His figure was bent and one of his eyes seemed to be blind. He only held a dirty long sword in his hand. His original appearance could not be seen. In other places, no one would even look at such an old man. But here, this old man did not seem out of place when he stood next to Dugu Li and Shen Baochen. His aura was as terrifying as an abyss. This time, even Xiahou Zhen, a martial Dao grandmaster, could not recognize him. However, Shudu, who had always been lazy, suddenly said, "This old man is an old man guarding the Storm Sword Tomb. It doesn't matter what his name is. Anyway, in this generation, there is only one heir, and they have been guarding the sword vault for generations, never leaving it even an inch. The last time he left Windcloud Sword Mound, it was because the demonic path's overlord, Demon Lord 9 in Zhaoyang, that old lunatic's actions were too crazy. He killed people without restraint in the martial world, and even a few elites from the Great Light Temple and Windcloud Sword Mound died in his hands. At that time, senior brother Su Yun went with this old fellow. Senior brother Su Yun told us that he didn't make a move. Only this old fellow made a move. After that, Yin Zhaoyang died without a complete corpse." Hearing this, everyone present gasped. The way they looked at the sloppy old man instantly changed. They had never heard of the Storm Sword Mound's Tombkeeper, but they knew about Demon Lord 9 Yin Zhaoyang. He was a demonic path overlord from 100 years ago. He had the cultivation of spiritual cultivation with true fire, and he had once dominated the martial world. However, in his later years, there seemed to be some problems with the martial arts he cultivated, and there was something wrong with his brain. He crazily slaughtered the elites of the martial world and used their heart blood to refine medicine in order to extend his lifespan. It was extremely difficult to extend one's lifespan. Using the so-called heart blood to extend one's lifespan sounded unreliable, but at that time, Yin Zhaoyang had completely gone crazy and caused quite a stir in the martial world. However, no one knew when Yin Zhaoyang had suddenly disappeared without a trace. It was only now that everyone knew that Yin Zhaoyang had died in the hands of this unremarkable old man. In that case, didn't this person have already reached spiritual cultivation with true fire 100 years ago? The way everyone looked at the 5 major sword sects changed slightly. The 5 major sword sects were really going to play it big this time. Jianan King, Dugu Li, the sect master of the Forgetful Sword Hut, Shen Baochen, and the Storm Sword Mound's Tombkeeper were all experts among experts at spiritual cultivation with true fire. The demonic path was probably going to be in trouble this time. However, before anyone could react, Wei Shuya said coldly, "Don't hold it in anymore. Show yourself when you're ready." Wei Shuya's voice did not sound loud, but it seemed to spread throughout the entire floating Jade Mountain. As Wei Shuya's voice fell, a series of battle cries came from the foot of floating Jade Mountain. Demonic chi and murderous intent surged, instantly surrounding the entire floating Jade Mountain. Dozens of disciples in charge of guarding the gate at the foot of the mountain ran up in a panic. As they ran, they shouted, "This is bad." The demonic path has surrounded the entire floating jade mountain. As the warrior's voice fell, countless demonic path warriors surged up from all directions. These people were from the moon-worshipping sect, the evil zenith sect, the five venom sect, and the other sections. They were all warriors from the bright demon lineage. Among these warriors, the moon-worshipping sect had the most people. After all, in the eyes of most demonic path warriors, the moon-worshipping sect represented the number one sect of the demonic path. Among the group of people from the moon-worshipping sect, a man shrouded in a black robe stepped through the air. He stepped through the crowd and stood beside Wuxia. This mysterious black-robed man wore a golden jade dragon crown on his head. His black robe was also embroidered with strange golden runes. He stood with his hands behind his back, and an ancient and desolate aura emanated from him. It's the East Monarch Tai of the moon-worshipping sect's 9 great god magi. Everyone's expressions changed slightly. This person was definitely one of the top 3 figures in the moon-worshipping sect. The ranking of the moon-worshipping sect had always been based on the sect leader, the high priest, and the saintess. The 9 great divine magispriests could only be ranked behind them. However, this generation's saintess was still young and had yet to mature. Eastern Emperor Tai's strength could be said to be amazing. He was even able to compete with the high priest in the moon-worshipping sect. Therefore, his status was probably the highest among all the Eastern Emperor Tais in history. At this time, on the moon-worshipping sect's side, a woman shrouded in a black veil was dancing. Her figure was graceful and exquisite. Although her face was also covered by a black veil, it could not hide her extremely charming charm. However, although her dance was beautiful, the things under her feet made people's scalps go numb. They were densely packed, and countless goo insects danced to her rhythm. Moon-worshipping sect's saintess. Everyone present almost instantly recognized this woman's identity. Among the 4 great beauties of the martial arts world, the righteous path had Yen Fian, the cloud sword fairy of the Yunu Palace, while the demonic path had moon-worshipping sect's saintess as the most famous. But the strange thing was that the people of the martial arts world had never seen what this saintess looked like. They did not even know how old she was because those who had seen her true appearance were all dead people. But even so, the people of the martial arts world were sure that the appearance of moon-worshipping sect's saintess must be extremely beautiful. The reason was very simple. The moon-worshipping sect's saintess had to be extremely talented in order to be able to take on the role. At this time, around the moon-worshipping sect's saintess, 6 of the 9 great divine magispriests of the moon-worshipping sect had come. 6 powerful martial arts masters were enough to make people breathless. 2 of the top 4 existences of the moon-worshipping sect had come. One could imagine the importance that the moon-worshipping sect attached to this matter. And it was not over yet. Suddenly, a strange sound came from the demonic path side. It sounded like the voice of Buddha, but it contained an evil feeling that made people feel lustful. A middle-aged man in a black kasaya with long hair descended from the sky. 6 different expressions were changing on his face. Some were happy, some were angry, and some were greedy. It was like a mask that changed continuously, and it was incomparably mysterious. Seeing this person, the expressions of Su Du and Su Yen from the Great Light Temple turned serious. This person was the sect leader of the 6th demon sect, Mara E. Bushuan. In terms of reputation, the 6th demon sect on the isolated island in Hainan was not very famous. Yi Bushuan's reputation was also far from Wei Shuya and Donghuang Tai's. However, only the people from the Great Light Temple knew how terrifying the 6th demon sect was. They were definitely a formidable opponent of the Great Light Temple. Apart from these few powerhouses, the demonic path had come in full force. The powerhouses of the Rakshasa sect, the 5 Venoms sect, the Omniscient sect, and the other large sects had sent their disciples. Almost every sect had a martial arts master present. There were dozens of martial arts masters on both sides, as well as several powerful existences at the true fire spirit refinement realm. The entire floating jade mountain was like gunpowder that could be ignited by a single spark. Shen Baochen looked at Dong Huangtai and the others and said calmly, "The demonic path really thinks highly of our 5 major sword sections. They actually sent so many people. Why don't I see Yi Shaonan? He's an old friend. This time, I want to experience his heaven-mending sutra." Dong Huangtai said in a low voice, "You don't have the right to see the sect leader. If you want to experience the heaven-mending sutra, you'll have to risk your life to experience it. Shen Baochen, I'll only ask you one thing today. Will the 5 major sword sects hand over the demonic creation flag or not?" Dong Huangtai's voice was very strange. It was like a muffled drum. His voice was like thunder, echoing. Shen Baochen's lips curled into a smile. "Hand it over? Why should we hand it over? The demonic creation flag was snatched by our 5 major sword sects from the Kunlun devil cult in the past. If you want it, come and get it." Dong Huangtai took a step forward and said coldly, "It's always been the demonic path that plans in the dark, but this time, it's the 5 major sword sects who initiated the provocation. Floating Jade Mountain has turned into a river of blood. The one to blame is not the demonic path, but the 5 major sword sects." Shen Baochen shook his head. "How can we slay demons and defend justice without bloodshed? However, I believe that the ones who bleed the most on Floating Jade Mountain today will not be the 5 major sword sects, but the demonic path demons like you." With that, Shen Baochen said softly, "Activate the sword array." When the 3 words were spoken, the entire Floating Jade Mountain began to tremble. Instantly, multicolored light shone brightly, and sword chi surged into the sky. Chapter 398. The 5 major sword sects had teamed up to plot against the demonic cultivators. Even if Yi Shaonan was here, the 5 major sword sects would have more trump cards waiting for them, let alone Yi Shaonan. As Shen Baochen's voice fell, the entire Floating Jade Mountain was covered in dense array patterns. The strangest thing was that long swords rose into the air. There were tens of thousands of them, and the weakest one of them was a precious weapon. This was Storm Sword Tomb's Immortal Execution Myriad Swords Array. It was called Immortal Execution, but now it was used to suppress the demons. The 5 major sword sects had put in a lot of effort for this. The tens of thousands of precious weapons were almost all gathered by Hidden Sword Villa and Storm Sword Tomb. After all, these 2 sects had the most precious weapons and longswords. When the Immortal Execution Myriad Swords Array was activated, the demonic cultivators near the edge immediately wailed and were immediately killed. In mid-air, the long swords fell like meteors, killing and dismembering the demonic cultivators one by one. When he saw this, Wei Shuya shouted, "Attack!" As Wei Shuya's voice fell, the hidden Devil Clan cultivators who were originally hidden in the crowd, such as Mr. Liu, all revealed themselves and began to attack the people from the 5 major sword sects. In an instant, they dealt a devastating blow to the cultivators from the 5 major sword sects. In fact, the people from the 5 major sword sects had long been on guard. They also knew that the phaseless demon sect cultivators were good at concealment, and they were most likely hidden in the crowd. However, the people from the 5 major sword sects did not expect that there would be so many people hidden. With the help of the phaseless demon sect, the other hidden Devil Clan cultivators also disguised themselves to the extreme, so that the people from the 5 major sword sects could not discover them. This caused them to suffer losses and suffer significant losses. The old guard from Storm Sword Tomb did not say anything. He slashed out with the dirty longsword in his hand, bringing with it a powerful sword light that could cut through the heavens and earth. It was dazzling and almost covered the entire Floating Jade Mountain. Wei Shuya laughed coldly. Demonic chi surged around him, and his palm covered the sky. He grabbed the sword light and tore it apart. As the 2 of them fought, Dong Huangtai and Yi Bushuan also fought with Dugu Li and Shen Baochen respectively. Dong Huangtai didn't have a weapon, but his wide sleeves seemed to be able to cover the sky and contain everything, devouring all of Dugu Li's sword aura. Moreover, Dong Huangtai's own cultivation method was very special. It was not a pure demonic cultivation method. Instead, it was mixed with a strand of divinity, just like Chu Xiu's 3 blades of Avicii, which had been cultivated to the extreme. As Dong Huang Tai pushed his cultivation method to its limits, the illusory figure of a 100-meter-tall demon god appeared behind him. It had no legs, but its body was huge and its arms were long and narrow. The body condensed from black demonic energy had a pair of deep golden eyes. As the golden light shone, whether it was the power of the world or Du Gu Li's powerful sword Qi, they were all destroyed. As soon as they started fighting, Dong Huang Tai had already started to suppress Du Gu Li. This scene shocked everyone on the scene. The current East Emperor Tai was known as the most powerful among all divine magus priests, and he was strong enough to stand shoulder to shoulder with the high priest. Now, it seemed that he deserved his reputation. On the other side, Mara Ibuxuan was also fighting Shen Baochen with great intensity. The sixth demon sect was far away on an isolated island in Hainan and kept a low profile. They rarely involved themselves with matters related to the Central Plains warriors, so some of the warriors present did not know much about the sixth demon sect. This included Shen Baochen, who was also fighting a warrior from the sixth demon sect for the first time. The demonic energy around Ibuxuan surged, and wisps of mysterious aura burst forth. He did not fight Shen Baochen head-on at all. He formed a seal with his hands, and the four heavens, Wang Tian, Lili Tian, Yama Tian, Tusida Tian, Huala Tian, and Mahasvara Tian appeared. The six heavens of the desire realm surrounded Shen Baochen, and they seemed real and illusory at the same time. If Shen Baochen did not pay attention, he would be pulled into them. Although Shen Baochen's cultivation in the way of the sword and his unswerving determination would not cause him to fall into them, he still could not find a way to completely break out of the six heavens of the desire realm. This made him feel very depressed. The six powerful existences in the true fire spirit refinement realm were fighting, and it seemed that the five major sword sects were at a disadvantage. Wei Xia fought head-on with the elder of the Windcloud Sword Tomb, and the fight was spectacular. Dong Huang Tai was suppressing Du Gu Li. On the other side, Ibuxuan's attacks were extremely strange, and he was also entangled with Shen Baochen. In this way, the five major sword sects were already in danger. Moreover, the real danger for the five major sword sects was not on the side of the high-level cultivators, but on the side of the other cultivators. The five major sword sects had indeed made ample preparations this time. The cultivators of the five sects had gathered together, and they had the assistance of the Immortal Extermination Myriad Swords formation. However, it was a pity that they had to face the entire demonic Tao. There was the extremely powerful moon-worshipping cult, and the low-key but powerful sixth demon sect, as well as the evil extreme sect, five poison cult, Rakshasa sect, and other demonic Tao sections. Although these sects did not turn out in full force, each sect had used more than half of their strength, and their power could be said to be astonishing. Moreover, the hidden devil lineage was not weak either. Although they were few in number, they grouped together in twos and threes, and used all kinds of strange methods to secretly attack and kill the cultivators of the five major sword sects. There were many vicious and merciless demonic Tao villains in the hidden devil lineage. In the past, they would still keep a low profile and endure, but now, they all emerged and began to wantonly kill. Among them, the most outstanding performance was from the moon-worshipping cult. Although the hidden devil lineage did not admit it, among all the demonic Tao sects, there was indeed no demonic Tao sect that could compare to the moon-worshipping cult. And the moon-worshipping cult was the only existence in the demonic Tao that could compete with the Buddhist and Taoist lineages. The saintess of the moon-worshipping cult danced her graceful body. She wore a small silver bell on her wrist and held an exquisite jade drum in her hand. As she danced and beat it, it produced strange syllables. After hearing the sound, the goo insects around her became even more bloodthirsty and ferocious. Even the cultivators at the unity of heaven and man realm could not resist, and were instantly gnawed into a pile of white bones. There was a martial Tao grandmaster who wanted to deal with the saintess of the moon-worshipping cult first, but she was surrounded by the six god magus priests of the moon-worshipping cult. Those were six martial Tao grandmasters. Among the five major sword sects, the Hidden Sword Villa and the Yunu Palace, which were the weakest, did not even have six martial Tao grandmasters. How could they fight? The more they fought, the uglier the expressions of the people from the 5 major sword sects became. They had still underestimated the demonic Tao. They had miscalculated. In recent years, the demonic Tao had been suppressed. Other than the powerful sects like the moon-worshipping cult, which could be more at ease, and the sects that were far away from the central plains like the 6th demon sect, which could be more relaxed, the other demonic Tao sects had to tuck their tails between their legs and behave. Sects like the extreme evil sect and the 5 poison sect usually kept a low profile, and the demonic Tao villains of the hidden devil lineage also acted cautiously. Usually, they did not dare to surface at all. Only the scale of the phaseless demon sect dared to come out and cause trouble in the dark. Therefore, the performance of the demonic Tao gave the 5 major sword sects an illusion that the demonic Tao was very weak. It was really weak to the extreme. In the end, the 5 major sword sects realized that a starving camel was still bigger than a horse. When the demonic Tao was really forced into a corner, the powerful strength that they revealed was still shocking. However, the people from the 5 major sword sects were already in a difficult position. The fight had already reached such a stage. What else could they do? Retreat? While Shen Baochen was entangled with Yi Buxuan, he said in a clear voice, "Are you all still going to stand by and watch? The demonic Tao has already become so powerful. Do you all still want to watch another Kunlun devil cult appear in the underworld?" Shen Baochen's words were directed at the warriors from the other sections. In fact, in the beginning, these people did not want to participate in the battle between the 5 major sword sects and the demonic Tao. However, now that they saw the power that the demonic Tao had displayed, these people were filled with fear. They did not believe Shen Baochen's words about another Kunlun devil cult appearing. How could the Kunlun devil cult appear so easily? However, the might displayed by the demonic lineage had indeed exceeded their imagination. It was time to suppress them a little. The battle of orthodoxies in the underworld had always been cruel. The Buddhist and Taoist sects had conflicts with each other. The relationship between the 5 major sword sects and the Buddhist and Taoist sects was not very good. However, in general, they all had the same label, which was that they were orthodox sections. Therefore, now that the demonic Tao had become so powerful, even if it was not for the sake of exterminating demons and protecting the righteous path, they had to act for their own selfish desires. The Great Light Temple was the first to act. In fact, even if Shen Baochen did not say it, the Great Light Temple was prepared to act. There were 2 reasons. One was that the Great Light Temple had an extremely strong enmity towards the demonic Tao, and the other was that there were people from the 6th demon sect among the people who came this time. The martial arts of the Buddhist lineage had a natural restraining effect on the demonic Tao martial artists, and the martial arts of the 6th demon sect was a strong restraint on the Buddhist lineage. Therefore, the Great Light Temple saw the 6th demon sect martial artists as a thorn in their side. It was fine if they did not see them, but when they did, they naturally had to act. With the Great Light Temple taking the lead, other than the unaffiliated martial artists who were still somewhat wavering, the rest of the orthodox sects almost all joined the battle and began to kill the demonic Tao martial artists. Seeing this, a faint smile appeared at the corner of Shen Baochen's mouth. The strength of the demonic Tao was something that Shen Baochen and the other people from the 5 major sword sects did not expect. However, since they had acted, they certainly had more than one set of preparations. The martial artists who came to watch the ceremony were also part of their preparations. There was strength in numbers. This was the truth no matter where it was. Although the 5 major sword sects were very confident, they were still prepared to pull the other sects into the fray. If the 5 major sword sects won, these people could serve as spectators to show the might of the 5 major sword sects. On the contrary, if there were any changes to the plan, these people could also be used as external help. After all, the orthodox and demonic sects could not coexist. At this time and in this kind of situation, no sect would dare to hold back and not act. This was only a backup plan of the 5 major sword sects. They did not expect that an accident would really happen. They had no choice but to use the power of the martial artists present. Chapter 399. The process of the World Sword Sect Conference turning into a war between the righteous and demonic sects on floating Jade Mountain was as simple as that. As the other righteous sects attacked, the entire floating Jade Mountain was like a meat grinder. People were being killed almost every second. It was extremely cruel. However, the 5 major sword sects finally managed to turn the tables. However, on the side of the true fire spirit refinement stage powerhouse, Du Guli had been suppressed by Donghuang Tai to the point where he could barely breathe. The king of Jianan, Du Guli, was once a powerhouse who dominated the pugilistic world. He was once a madman who dared to attack the northern Yen alone to demand an explanation. The fact that Du Guli was still alive was enough to prove his talent and strength. However, it was a pity that Du Guli had encountered Donghuang Tai, who was even more talented and stronger than him. The demonic gods I could destroy all living things. Such an evil martial art was something that Du Guli had no way of dealing with. No matter how strong his sword Dao was, it was destroyed by the Eastern Emperor Tai's demonic god's golden eye. Donghuang Tai closed in casually. He raised his wide, black sleeves and floated in midair. As his wide sleeves pressed down, it was as if half of floating Jade Mountain had entered his sleeves. The sky suddenly darkened. Du Guli immediately felt a strong pressure coming from all directions. He had no time to think. The long sword in his hands spun and wisps of golden flames were released. Sword chi burned in the air. Sky-burning sword technique. However, before Du Guli could fully display the sky-burning sword technique, an explosion came from around him. A majestic demonic aura seemed to have appeared out of thin air and pressed him into the ground. The entire floating Jade Mountain trembled and a crack appeared on the mountain. A martial arts grandmaster could split a river with a single sword and shatter a mountain with a single punch. Although it was only a small mountain that was shattered, the power of a martial arts grandmaster was already terrifying enough. The floating Jade Mountain was huge. Even if more than 10 martial Dao masters attacked it together, they would not be able to shatter it. However, now that there were 6 existences at the level of Donghuang Tai, it did not seem difficult for them to completely shatter the entire floating Jade Mountain. Du Guli, who was smashed into the ground, spat out a mouthful of blood. His eyes were filled with shock. Ever since he had been seriously injured in the northern Yen, Du Guli had rarely fought. Therefore, it had been a long time since he had experienced the taste of being seriously injured. Now, he had finally tasted it again. Donghuang Tai stepped forward, wanting to kill Du Guli once and for all. However, at that moment, the tomb keeper who had been paying attention to the battle suddenly shouted, "Bring out the abyssal sword." As soon as he finished speaking, Yan Ji, who had been fighting with the 6th Heavenly Demon Sect's martial artist, immediately retreated. He bit his finger and pressed it against his forehead. In an instant, a golden light bloomed and the ground of the arena beneath him split open. A pitch-black longsword rose from the cracked ground. Although it was called a longsword, the longsword's appearance was very strange. It was like an incomplete sword embryo. The blade and hilt of the sword were both black iron in color. Even the blade was crooked and unsharpened. However, this long sword carried an incomparably ferocious aura. Only the heavens knew how much slaughter this sword had been stained with. This sword was the peerless sword of the Storm Sword Mound, the murderous weapon abyssal. Ranked 6th in the world-famous sword manual, the murderous weapon abyssal. According to the legends, the murderous weapon abyssal wasn't forged by man. Instead, it was born on an island in the North Sea in a bottomless abyss. Its original form was an iron rod made of an unknown material. However, it was extremely sturdy. Not only could it contain any type of chi, but it could also absorb the power of heaven and earth. It could be called a rare treasure. However, ever since this iron rod was brought out, it seemed to have a curse on it. Anyone who possessed it would die a violent death. The iron rod was also stained with countless amounts of blood. Later on, it was obtained by a Grandmaster sword-crafting master. That Grandmaster sword-crafting master refined it into a sword as if he had obtained a priceless treasure. However, because the material was too sturdy, it was very difficult to refine. That Grandmaster sword-crafting master spent a lot of effort to forge it into a sword embryo. However, before he could truly start refining it, that Grandmaster sword-crafting master was already killed. However, at this time, although the murderous abyss was still a sword embryo, it had already taken shape. Moreover, because the sword was stained with countless amounts of blood, the murderous chi on the murderous abyss was extremely dense. Anyone who obtained it would be affected by it and become a madman who only knew how to kill. Moreover, at this time, everyone knew the special characteristics of the murderous abyss. Not only could it absorb the power of heaven and earth, it could also absorb the chi and blood of martial artists as nourishment. Sometimes, if its owner did not kill enough, the murderous abyss would even affect its owner, forcing them to go on a killing spree. With this kind of behavior, the murderous abyss could already be said to be a murderous weapon among murderous weapons. The last master of the murderous abyss had died at the hands of Storm's sword mound. The murderous abyss had also been suppressed by the people of Storm's sword mound using the powerful sword intent of the land of buried swords. In all these years, the number of times that Storm's sword mound had used the murderous abyss could be counted on one's fingers. Normally, unless it was a critical moment, they would not be willing to use the murderous abyss. After all, a murderous weapon was a murderous weapon. It was something that harmed others as well as oneself. Using the murderous abyss was not a good thing for the user as it would harm their chi and blood. Moreover, if an accident happened and caused the murderous abyss to go out of control, it would cause unimaginable losses. This time, the 5 great sword sects were also serious. Before setting up the trap, Storm's sword mound had already brought the murderous abyss with them. However, they did not want to use it. But looking at the situation now, if they did not use the murderous abyss, the 5 great sword sects would not be able to hold on much longer. Yanji used his blood as a guide to activate the murderous abyss. In an instant, the murderous abyss exploded with a terrifying murderous power. The crimson power dyed the pitch-black murderous abyss red. In the blink of an eye, the murderous abyss that was suspended in mid-air disappeared. However, in the next moment, it had already appeared in front of Dong Huangtai. Dong Huangtai's wide sleeves danced and his body turned into a black mist. The murderous abyss flashed through the black mist. It did not hurt Dong Huangtai, but it completely shattered the demonic shadow behind him. A strange look appeared in Dong Huangtai's eyes. Murderous abyss? Your storm sword mound has prepared quite well this time. Unfortunately, no matter how strong a weapon is, it is still a dead object. You want to turn the tide with a single weapon of death? Dream on. As soon as he finished speaking, demonic aura surged around Dong Huangtai. His entire person disappeared within the boundless demonic aura. The majestic demonic aura covered the sky, almost enveloping the entire floating jade mountain within it. Once true fire and spirit ascension realm cultivators fought, their power was simply terrifying. After this battle, the entire floating jade mountain would probably be destroyed by them. The cultivators of both the righteous and demonic sides were engaged in a fierce battle. At this moment, Chu Xiu was slacking off. At a time like this, Chu Xiu would not be so idiotic as to reveal his identity. He had to make good use of his identity as a member of the righteous and demonic sections. Before this, Mr. Liu had already sent a voice transmission to Chu Xiu, asking him to use this opportunity to help him get rid of someone. Chu Xiu had also agreed. After all, he did not like that guy very much. That person was Mr. Shan Yin of the Five Venoms sect, Chou Xiangzi. The Five Venoms sect seemed to have some conflicts with the Phaseless Demon sect, and Chou Xiangzi was also an old enemy of Mr. Liu. Previously, during the Demonic Alliance conference, both sides had fought. However, at that time, Chu Xiu had to hide his identity so he could not kill. Moreover, with so many demonic cultivators present, Chu Xiu could not kill. Now was the perfect time. Although right now was the time for the demonic sects to join forces to fight against the righteous sects, and Chu Xiu killing one of his own was somewhat unethical, neither Chu Xiu nor Mr. Liu felt guilty. Whether Chu Xiu, who was pretending to be a rising star of the demonic sects, counted as a member of the demonic sects or not, Even Chu Xiu himself could not be sure. However, right now, this identity was advantageous to Chu Xiu, so Chu Xiu was prepared to continue pretending. As for Mr. Liu, he had wanted to kill Chou Xiangzi for a long time. The Five Venoms sect was backed by the moon-worshipping sect, and they had found such a big backer by being a dog for the moon-worshipping sect. This made the people of the Phaseless Demon sect very unhappy. Now that they had gotten rid of Chou Xiangzi, they could at least vent their anger. So in the chaotic battle between both sides, Chu Xiu fought and retreated, and finally found Chou Xiangzi's figure. At this time, Chou Xiangzi was very happy killing. The martial arts of the Five Venoms sect were very useful in this kind of chaotic battle. Once the Five Venoms true chi was released, it would immediately affect a large number of people. He would kill whoever was poisoned the most. Some of the poisonous insects in his body needed to be fed with blood. Usually, he did not have the chance, and did not have the guts to kill so many righteous martial artists to feed his poisonous insects. This time, Chou Xiangzi had gotten back what he had lost. At this time, Chou Xiangzi was surrounded by poisonous mist as he chased a Ba Mountain Sword Sect 5 Chis towards the source martial artist. The Ba Mountain Sword Sect martial artist was about to collapse. He had clearly come to participate in the World Sword Sect Conference. How did this place become a battlefield in the blink of an eye, and everyone started to kill? This martial artist did not understand, so he could only run for his life. In the outside world, a 5 Chis towards the source martial artist could be called an expert, but in a place like this, even a martial arts grandmaster could not escape unscathed, much less a 5 Chis towards the source martial artist. Just as Chou Xiangzi was about to reach the Ba Mountain Sword Sect martial artist, a golden handprint fell down and instantly defeated all the poisonous insects and goo in front of him. Chu Xiu's figure blocked in front of Chou Xiangzi. This caused Chou Xiangzi and the 5 Chis towards the source martial artist to be stunned. The Ba Mountain Sword Sect martial artist did not seem to think that the one who saved him was Chu Xiu, who had some enmity with the Ba Mountain Sword Sect. Had Chu Xiu changed his personality? He did not seem to be as bad as the sect said. As for Chou Xiangzi, he felt that Chu Xiu was somewhat familiar. While Chu Xiu had attacked many times on the stage, because of the distance, Chou Xiangzi did not pay much attention. But now, he truly felt that Chu Xiu's presence was somewhat familiar. Chapter 400. The Ba Mountain Sword Sect warrior was shocked by Chu Xiu's help. Thinking of how he and the others had wanted to make trouble for Chu Xiu before, the Ba Mountain Sword Sect warrior could not help but feel ashamed. The warrior bowed to Chu Xiu in a grateful and guilty tone. "Thank you, Master Chu, for not holding grudges against us and saving us." Chu Xiu waved his hand and put on a righteous and magnanimous expression. "I do have some grievances with the Ba Mountain Sword Sect, but those are personal grievances. You and I are both righteous warriors. Facing these murderers of the demonic path, we should put down our past grievances and work together against the enemy." The Ba Mountain Sword Sect warrior nodded fiercely upon hearing this. His gaze towards Chu Xiu changed slightly. The rumors in the Jianghu had always said that Chu Xiu was too vicious and heartless, and did not seem like someone of the righteous path. But now, it seemed that this Master Chu could still distinguish between righteousness and personal grievances. He was definitely not as bad as the rumors said. At this time, Chou Xiangzi did not have the mind to consider why he found Chu Xiu familiar. Chou Xiangzi sneered and said, "Chu Xiu, your Guanzhong torture room is not of the righteous path, and belongs to a neutral faction. The battle on Floating Jade Mountain has nothing to do with you, but you insist on interfering. Do you want to die?" Chu Xiu took a step forward and said righteously, "Who says the Guanzhong torture room is not of the righteous path? Everyone is responsible for the rise and fall of the world. The safety of the righteous path must be shouldered by us. You murderers of the demonic path are so arrogant. I think you are the ones who want to die." Chu Xiu's words were righteous as though he really was a hero of the righteous path. Chou Xiangzi sneered when he heard this. The 5 poison genuine qi around his body erupted. Amidst the colorful poisonous mist, there were also ear-piercing cries of insects. Surprisingly, There were many evil poisonous insects hidden in the poisonous mist. Zhou Xiangzi had seen Chu Xiu fight before, but at that time, the demonic path had not completely invaded floating Jade Mountain. As the hidden devil sect, the five poison sect, of course, would not be able to see it clearly like Mr. Liu and the others. Zhou Xiangzi was watching from a big tree on the cliff. Because of the distance, he couldn't feel how strong Chu Xiu's power was. It was very vague. Zhou Xiangzi couldn't even see the details of his attack. At most, he could only see the final result. However, in his opinion, Chu Xiu was not at the level of Fang Qishao. He was only at the 5 qis collecting in the origin realm. Even if he was strong, how strong could he be? With this thought in mind, Zhou Xiangzi did not even use his full strength. He only used 80% of it. Of course, he did not waste the other 20% of his strength. Instead, he was constantly paying attention to the movements around him, afraid that someone would sneak up on him. Although the people fighting the demonic path were all disciples of the righteous path, they were all warriors. Putting aside their own orthodoxy, who would not be more vicious than the other? At that moment, Chu Xiu took a step forward, and his figure actually merged into the poisonous mist. Before Zhou Xiangzi could mock Chu Xiu for courting death, a blinding Buddhist light had already bloomed in the poisonous mist, tearing it apart and shattering the poisonous insects. Buddhist martial arts again. Seeing this scene, Zhou Xiangzi was so angry that he wanted to vomit blood. He was not weak in the 5 poison sect. In terms of cultivation, Zhou Xiangzi was almost half a step into the Grandmaster realm. Few warriors of the same level could beat him. However, now that he had met his nemesis, Zhou Xiangzi felt very helpless. He had already deliberately avoided the group of monks from the Great Light Temple, but he did not expect that he would meet someone who was leading the way and was also using Buddhist martial arts. At the thought of this, Zhou Xiangzi subconsciously thought of the detestable kid called Lin Yi that Lu Jin had brought. That guy also seemed to be proficient in Buddhist martial arts. However, before Zhou Xiangzi could think further, Chu Xiu had already conjured the Great Vajra Wheel seal and attacked Zhou Xiangzi repeatedly. Previously at the demonic path meeting, because Chu Xiu needed to hide his identity, he did not use his signature fast and slow 9 words formula. Instead, he only used the Great Vajra superpower that he had just learned. Although the few Dharma forms formed by the Great Vajra superpower were not weak, they were not as handy as the fast and slow 9 words formula. For example, Chu Xiu used the glazed golden silk goo to restrain the poisonous goo and the Buddhist martial arts to restrain Zhou Xiangzi. A series of attacks directly suppressed Zhou Xiangzi to the extreme. The more Zhou Xiangzi fought, the more aggrieved he felt. His cultivation was actually considered to be half a step into the martial Dao Grandmaster realm, at least in terms of using poison. Warriors of the same level who were one with heaven and man would be afraid of his poison techniques and would be restrained when fighting him. However, Chu Xiu seemed to be immune to all poisons. Zhou Xiangzi's poison techniques could not do anything to him at all. Therefore, when he felt that he had been suppressed to the extreme, Zhou Xiangzi made a prompt decision to immediately escape and let the others deal with Chu Xiu. There were so many righteous experts on floating Jade Mountain. Zhou Xiangzi could go and kill others to gain credit. There was no need for him to fight to the death with Chu Xiu here. However, since Chu Xiu had the intention to kill, how could he let Zhou Xiangzi leave so easily? Just as Zhou Xiangzi was about to retreat, Chu Xiu formed the lion seal with his hand. In an instant, a thunderous explosion was heard, causing Zhou Xiangzi's body to tremble. He could not help but grunt, and a ruthless look appeared in his eyes. Since Chu Xiu was unwilling to let him off, then he wanted to see who would be the one to die in the end. As a demonic martial artist from the 5 poison sect, Zhou Xiangzi's personality was naturally cruel and ruthless. He had wanted to retreat earlier only because he realized that Chu Xiu was proficient in Buddhist martial arts and would be at a disadvantage if he fought him. However, since Chu Xiu was persistent, he would use his trump card and see who would emerge victorious in the end. The moment he turned around, Zhou Xiangzi blasted out with both palms and a large amount of poisonous fog erupted, meeting Chu Xiu's Great Vajra Wheel seal. There was an explosion of Buddhist light, and Chou Xiangzi's poisonous fog was completely shattered. However, at this moment, two palm-sized golden snakes rushed out of the poisonous fog and attacked Chu Xiu. The two palm-sized golden snakes were extremely fast and arrived in front of Chu Xiu in almost an instant. Chu Xiu formed the Duga seal with his hand, but the strange thing was that the two snakes completely ignored Chu Xiu's Gangqi defense and continued to attack him. Frowning, Chu Xiu raised the heavenly demon dance in his hand as he retreated. However, the astral blade demonic qi had almost no effect on the two golden snakes. With two clangs, the two golden snakes were sent flying by Chu Xiu, but there was only a white mark on their bodies. The attack from his sixth transformation treasure weapon had little effect on them. Chou Xiangzi couldn't help but sneer when he saw this. These two golden snakes were a mutated species he found in the mountains of Miaojiang. They were called little Vajra snakes. They were impervious to Gang Qi and 100 weapons. Although they were not ferocious beasts, they had all kinds of strange powers. However, feeding these little Vajra snakes was too difficult. They only ate bone marrow, and it was the bone marrow of martial artists. The stronger the better. Even if Chou Xiangzi killed people every day, he couldn't afford to feed them. Most of the time, he let the two little Vajra snakes sleep temporarily and only used them at critical moments. Although Chou Xiangzi would have to kill people everywhere to find bone marrow to feed these two little Vajra snakes, it was worth it as long as he could kill Chu Xiu. It must be known that although Chu Xiu was not a big shot of the righteous sex, he was still one of the top 10 elites on the Longhu list. Killing him would be a great credit. The two little Vajra snakes pounced on Chu Xiu again under the command of Chou Xiangzi's Gangqi. But this time, Chu Xiu did not move. The power of the soul-shifting technique of extinguishing heaven and extinguishing earth erupted. In an instant, the two little Vajra snakes were bleeding from their mouths and noses. They twitched for a while and then stopped moving. These things were not afraid of Gangqi and were impervious to 100 weapons. Could it be that their mental strength was so strong? Chou Xiangzi's heart was bleeding at the sight of this. Back then, for the sake of these two little Vajra snakes, Chou Xiangzi risked being chased by righteous martial artists to kill them and extract their bone marrow. Only then did he manage to feed them and keep them alive. But now, they both died in the hands of Chu Xiu. Chu Xiu, I will kill you! Chou Xiangzi roared and took the initiative to attack Chu Xiu. However, although Chou Xiangzi was angry, he was not an idiot. He was not good at close combat, so he would not fight to the death with Chu Xiu. After approaching Chu Xiu, a scarlet blood light burst out of Chou Xiangzi's sleeve and went straight for Chu Xiu. The scarlet blood light looked like sword qi, but upon a closer look, it was actually a ferocious blood-colored centipede the size of a dagger and a foot long. This thing was called the 1,000 Poison Blood Centipede. It was a secret poisonous insect refined by the 5 Poisons Order. It was fed with blood essence and supported by countless poisonous creatures. During this period, the 1,000 Poison Blood Centipede could not die. Although the 1,000 Poison Blood Centipede refined by Chou Xiangzi did not really reach 10,000 kinds of poison, it still had thousands of kinds. Its power was very strong. It could not be said to kill upon contact. The 1,000 Poison Blood Centipede had not been completely refined by Chou Xiangzi. Using it now would affect the growth of the 1,000 Poison Blood Centipede. However, at this moment, he hated Chu Xiu to the extreme, so he couldn't care about anything else. This time, he had to kill Chu Xiu. However, before the 1,000 Poison Blood Centipede could reach him, Chou Xiangzi's eyes widened in disbelief. The 1,000 Poison Blood Centipede, which he regarded as his last base, was easily clamped between 2 fingers by Chu Xiu. The ferocious 1,000 Poison Blood Centipede was like a weak little insect in Chu Xiu's hands. It was actually trembling there. As Chu Xiu's fingers moved slightly, the 1,000 Poison Blood Centipede was directly split into 2 by Chu Xiu's Gangqi. No! Chou Xiangzi roared angrily, but it was too late. It should be said that Chou Xiangzi's decision to use these poisonous creatures and goo worms to deal with Chu Xiu was a mistake. The glazed gold silk goo in Chu Xiu's body had an innate suppressive effect on all kinds of poisonous creatures and goo worms. Unless the goo worm's level was higher than the glazed gold silk goo, These poisonous creatures and goo worms were all trash in front of Chu Xiu. Chapter 401. Mr. Lu had previously told Chu Xiu that the five poison sect basically followed the lead of moon-worshipping sect. In the past, Chu Xiu had thought that it was only because the five poison sect was too close to moon-worshipping sect. Now, it seemed that there was more to it. Moon-worshipping sect was also good at refining goo, but unlike the five poison sect, which only refined poison goo, they refined other higher-level goo worms, just like the glazed golden thread goo in Chu Xiu's body. Refining goo was only a branch of moon-worshipping sect's cultivation method, and could only be regarded as a support. The true moon-worshipping sect's martial artists mainly cultivated extremely powerful demonic techniques. So in this way, moon-worshipping sect's martial artists could completely suppress the five poison sect. It was no wonder that the five poison sect was so respectful to moon-worshipping sect. At this time, Chu Xiu was facing Chou Xiangzi in the same way, completely suppressing him to the point where he could not breathe. Chou Xiangzi had completely lost the will to fight, but unfortunately, Chu Xiu did not want to give him another chance to escape. The great Vajra wheel seal came crashing down, and several seals directly hit Chou Xiangzi until he vomited blood. However, the more Chou Xiangzi fought, the more familiar he felt with Chu Xiu. After all, one's appearance could be changed, but a person's habits in battle could not be changed. Others might not be able to sense this, but Chou Xiangzi could be said to be a wily old fox in the pugilistic world. He had fought in the pugilistic world for decades, and his combat experience was very rich. Chou Xiangzi suddenly thought of something. It seemed that during the Demonic Alliance meeting when he fought with Lin Yi, he did not use his trump card goo worms, but his goo worms were also ineffective against the other party. Chou Xiangzi looked at Chu Xiu, and his eyes widened in shock. You are, however, before he could finish his sentence, he saw Chu Xiu's hand shine brightly, and the dazzling Buddhist light condensed all the power in Chu Xiu's body and came crashing down. Perfect Aquarius seal. A loud sound rang out. Chou Xiangzi's heart meridian was directly smashed by Chu Xiu's Aquarius seal of perfection. Chou Xiangzi would never be able to say his last sentence. Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows and stepped over Chou Xiangzi's corpse. He exchanged glances with Mr. Lu, and the two of them avoided the crowd without batting an eyelid, heading towards a dark corner of the periphery to hide together. The death of Chou Xiangzi did not attract too much attention. After all, this was the battlefield of the righteous and demonic factions. Not to mention Chou Xiangzi, a martial artist at the unity of heaven and man realm, even if a martial Dao Grand Master died, no one would pay attention to it at all. At that moment, Chu Xiu and Mr. Lu were hiding behind a huge rock at the edge of floating Jade Mountain. Chu Xiu had changed his clothes and put on a mask. Mr. Lu chuckled and said, "Well done. That old bastard Chou Xiangzi is very disgusting. I've long wanted to kill him, but I never had the chance. Now that he has sacrificed himself for the demonic path, I believe the people of the Five Poisons sect will erect a memorial arch for him." After saying that, Mr. Lu looked at Chu Xiu and said, "You're also going to kill someone?" Chu Xiu had already sent a voice transmission to Mr. Lu, asking him to cooperate with him to kill someone. Now that Chu Xiu had two identities, he could fish in troubled waters in the battlefield of the righteous and demonic factions. It could even be said that as long as Chu Xiu did not act so arrogantly as to approach a martial Dao Grandmaster, basically no martial artist of the same level could do anything to him. Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes and said, "Of course I'm going to kill Nie Donglu and Xiahou Wujiang. These two guys are very annoying and have caused me a lot of trouble. Although it's never too late for a gentleman to take revenge, I want to take revenge now." There was no need to talk about Nie Donglu. In the past, when Chu Xiu was hunted down, even if Nie Donglu wanted to reconcile, Chu Xiu would not agree. After all, Chu Xiu was not broad-minded. Xiahou Wujiang was also like a fly, stirring up trouble every now and then, which also made Chu Xiu want to kill him. Mr. Lu nodded and looked at the battlefield, frowned and said, "Who do you want to kill first?" "It's a bit troublesome to kill Nie Donglu first. This guy is really cunning, slacking off behind a group of martial Dao Grandmasters. It's a bit difficult to kill him. This time, there were no martial Dao Grand Master level experts coming to the morgue. After all, Nianlong was the only martial Dao Grand Master in the entire morgue. It was not appropriate for him to leave the morgue for such a long time, so only some Unity of Heaven and Man realm martial artists followed Nie Donglu. But Nie Donglu was smart because he knew how to take advantage of the situation. The morgue was very famous in northern Yen, and Nianlong had a wide network of friends. This time, almost all the northern Yen martial Dao Grandmasters were friends with Nianlong. It was very safe for Nie Donglu to follow behind them, and he could also take the opportunity to kill some demonic martial artists who were not as strong as him, accumulating his own reputation. Now it was a bit difficult for Chu Xiu to kill Nie Donglu, unless he got rid of all of Nie Dongliu's people. Although Chu Xiu was considered a rising star of the hidden devil lineage, he still had some face. However, it was clear that his face was not that big. So, Chu Xiu directly looked at Xiahou Wujiang and said, "Let's get rid of Xiahou Wujiang first. If there's a chance later, then we'll deal with Nie Donglu." Xiahou Wujiang was actually following behind Xiahou Zhen, but Xiahou Zhen was alone. Xiahou Wujiang was fighting with those Devil Dao martial artists under the protection of his father, which could also be considered as accumulating experience. Mr. Lu narrowed his eyes and said, "This is easy to deal with, let's do it." As his voice fell, Mr. Lu left first to inform the martial Dao Grand Masters of the phaseless demon sect. Of course, he couldn't deal with Xiahou Zhen, a martial Dao Grand Master, so he still needed the experts of the phaseless demon sect to come. This time, the martial Dao Grand Masters of the phaseless demon sect were also not few, and one of them was the Shade Demon Envoy, Sidali, who fought at the Divine Weapon Conference. This martial Dao Grand Master also had a grudge against the martial artists of the Hidden Sword Villa, and at this time, he was staring at the martial artists of the Hidden Sword Villa. After receiving the news from Mr. Lu, Situ Li's eyes showed a touch of surprise, and directly changed his opponent, attacking Xiahou Zhen. Situ Li also knew about Chu Xiu's matter, and even many people in the entire phaseless demon sect knew about it, so they didn't object to Mr. Lu befriending and helping Chu Xiu. The phaseless demon sect had a good reputation in the Hidden Devil clan over the years. Now that the number of people in the Hidden Devil clan was decreasing, it had already begun to wither. At this time, it was very worthwhile for the phaseless demon sect to make friends with a young elite who came from the direct line of descent of the Devil clan. Moreover, with the strength that Chu Xiu had displayed, it was worth it for the phaseless demon sect to invest. The most important thing was that Chu Xiu was discovered by Mr. Lu, and Mr. Lu's position in the phaseless demon sect was far higher than Chu Xiu imagined. In the past, Mr. Lu was already an elite disciple of the phaseless demon sect when he was young, and now that he had stepped into the half-step Grandmaster realm, becoming a martial Dao Grandmaster was only a matter of time. Therefore, in the phaseless demon sect, the weight of Mr. Lu's words could basically be used as half a martial Dao Grandmaster. At this time, Xiahou Zhen didn't pay attention to what was happening around him. He was fighting with a group of people in the crowd, but he still retained some strength. This matter was mainly caused by the 5 major sword sects, so naturally, the 5 major sword sects should be the main force. Although they could make a move, there was no need to fight to the death. Therefore, Xiahou Zhen usually only exchanged a few blows with those demonic martial artists, and then immediately escaped, not entangled with them at all. As for those demonic martial artists, they also had a lot of enemies, so they wouldn't entangle with Xiahou Zhen endlessly. However, at this moment, a dense demonic qi suddenly attacked. Xiahou Zhen's spirit shone with a golden light, drawing the power of heaven and earth to condense into a shield beside him. With a loud bang, the demonic qi dissipated, and Xiahou Zhen's spirit shield also shattered. Xiahou Zhen turned his head and looked, and Sidali was staring at him with a sneer. The phaseless demon sect's Shade Demon Envoy, Sidali, was still very famous. Xiahou Zhen also knew him, but there was no enmity between the two sides, nor was there any conflict. Of course, now that the righteous and demonic sects on Floating Jade Mountain were fighting, even if there was no conflict in the past, it was very normal for both sides to fight during the war between the righteous and demonic sections. Just as Xiahou Zhen was about to say something, Sidali rushed towards him again. His hands formed a seal, and in an instant, monstrous demonic qi enveloped Xiahou Zhen, turning into a world of bliss that pulled Xiahou Zhen into it. There were fairies dancing on the upper level, and there were hellish ghosts constantly howling below. It was extremely evil, and it wore down Xiahou Zhen's spirit. This was the phaseless demon sect's Sky Demon Formless technique. Sidu Li's Sky Demon Formless technique was closer to a spiritual attack, and it just so happened that Xiahou Zhen was also good in this aspect. Looking at the dancing fairies and ghosts around him, Xiahou Zhen sneered. His body shone with a golden light, and the power of his soul turned into a long sword, directly shattering the world of bliss in front of him. However, Sidu Li did not retreat. Instead, he slammed his palm down, and the monstrous demonic qi roared as he fought with Xiahou Zhen. The more Xiahou Zhen fought, the more he felt that something was wrong. Just what kind of grudge did he have with Sidu Li? Why was he pestering him like this, as if he wanted to fight to the death with him? This time, it was the five-sword sects that wanted to slap the demonic sects in the face. The fortune demon flag was also in their hands. Even if Sidu Li wanted to fight to the death, he should fight the five-sword sections. Why was he fighting him? As he fought, Xiahou Zhen said coldly, "Sidu Li, my Xiahou clan doesn't seem to have offended you, right?" Sidu Li let out a strange laugh and said, "Since your Xiahou clan is standing on the side of the righteous sects, you have offended me. The righteous and demonic sects are irreconcilable. You are already standing on the side of the five-sword sects to kill us evil sects, and now you still expect me to hold back?" As soon as he finished speaking, Sidu Li attacked Xiahou Zhen again, looking like he had to fight to the death with Xiahou Zhen. Secretly cursing Sidu Li for being a lunatic, Xiahou Zhen had no choice but to bite the bullet and continue attacking. At this time, the masked Chu Xiu appeared behind Xiahou Wujiang. With a cold look in his eyes, he slammed his fist down, and demonic killing intent gathered. Chapter 402. Xiahou Wujiang was actually a little depressed. This World Sword Sect conference was somewhat baffling to him. He had followed his father to see the world and accumulate experience, but he had unexpectedly encountered Chu Xiu, a sworn enemy. He had wanted to scheme against him, but he had not succeeded. Then, the World Sword Sect conference turned into the so-called righteous and demonic wars. As one of the 9 great families, the Xiahou clan was naturally considered a righteous sect. At this time, they naturally had to take action. However, Xiahou Wujiang was not in the mood to eliminate demons and defend the righteous path. He just followed behind Xiahou Zhen and occasionally used the Imperial Spirit technique to sneak an attack on those demonic path martial artists whose strength was far inferior to his. He looked listless. From this point, the gap between Nie Donglu and Xiahou Wujiang could be seen, as well as their attitudes towards certain things. Nie Donglu had also suffered at the hands of Chu Xiu, and he had even been defeated by Chu Xiu in front of everyone, losing face and reputation. But now, this righteous and demonic wars were an opportunity for Nie Donglu. Xiahou Wujiang was leeching off listlessly. Nie Donglu was also leeching off. However, he would put on a show and kill some demonic path warriors. He would also take the initiative to rescue some warriors in danger to build up his reputation. In the past, Nie Dongliu's strength was not as good as Xiahou Wujiang's, but his ranking on the Longhu list was higher than Xiahou Wujiang's. This was one of the reasons. While Xiahou Wujiang was still being a hedonistic son of rich parents, eating, drinking, and having fun, relying solely on his talent to cultivate lazily, Nie Donglu had already begun to accumulate his own reputation. He would not let go of even the smallest matter. At this time, Xiahou Wujiang was still letting his imagination run wild. His father was entangled by the demonic path martial artists, but Xiahou Wujiang was not worried. He believed in Xiahou Zhen's strength. No, he was also subconsciously staying a little further away to avoid being accidentally injured during the fight between martial arts grandmaster-level powerhouses. At this moment, a powerful murderous intent assaulted him from behind, causing Xiahou Wujiang's expression to change. He formed a seal with both hands, and the spiritual energy around him materialized and attached itself to his hand seals. As Xiahou Wujiang's seal fell, it instantly erupted with blinding golden divine light. Only then was he able to block the punch coming from behind him. Turning his head, he saw a black-robed cultivator wearing a black iron mask staring at him. His eyes were bloodshot and filled with killing intent. Xiahou Wujiang frowned. Who was this guy? He had the same point of view as his father. Their Xiahou clan came to the World Sword Sect meet just to be bystanders. They were not prepared to get any benefits, but they did not plan to offend anyone either. However, it was clear that some people didn't think so. Some people were already planning to pester him. However, Xiahou Wujiang was not afraid. The person in front of him only had the strength of the 5 qis collecting in the origin realm. Xiahou Wujiang also had his own pride. No matter what, his strength could be ranked in the top 10 of the Longhu leaderboard. Few cultivators of the same rank could match him. This guy was nothing. However, just as Xiahou Wujiang was about to open his mouth to say something, Chu Xiu did not say anything. He directly punched out. The annihilating heaven and earth obliterating oblivion killing fist was displayed to the extreme by him. The scarlet killing intent seemed to have condensed into a substance as it once again charged towards Xiahou Wujiang. Seeing this scene, Xiahou Wujiang could not help but secretly curse that the person in front of him was crazy. He had the same reaction as his father. Hastily retreating, Xiahou Wujiang formed a seal with his hands, and dazzling golden light erupted from his primordial spirit. Although Xiahou Wujiang could not control the power of the world with the power of his primordial spirit like his father, his cultivation in the spirit control art was strong enough. Fusing his mental strength with his true qi, he shot explosively towards Chu Xiu like an arrow. With a loud bang, Chu Xiu's annihilating heaven and earth annihilating oblivion killing fist directly shattered the primordial spirit arrow, which immediately made Xiahou Wujiang's eyebrows jump. Xiahou Wujiang knew the power of the annihilating heaven and earth annihilating oblivion killing fist. After all, there were many people who knew this martial art in Jianghu. There were many experts from the military of Eastern Qi who knew this martial art, and Xiahou Wujiang had even seen them use it. However, even those cultivators from the military of Eastern Qi did not have such a terrifying cultivation in the annihilating heaven and earth annihilating oblivion killing fist. Who was this person in front of him to be able to condense such a terrifying killing intent? However, Xiahou Wujiang was not depressed at this time. Everyone had a weakness. The person in front of him was indeed terrifying in terms of strength, but the imperial spirit art of their Xiahou clan did not only have this little power. In the instant that the primordial spirit arrow was shattered, a golden light burst out from the exploding Gang Qi, heading straight for the aperture point between Chu Xiu's eyebrows. This was a golden light, the purest power of Xiahou Wujiang's primordial spirit. Once it entered his opponent's body, it would immediately suppress his opponent's mental strength, turning him into his puppet. However, in the instant that the golden light approached his body, Chu Xiu's eyes evolved into a boundless abyss, and he used the annihilating heaven and earth annihilating soul shifting technique. An equally majestic mental strength instantly strangled the golden light of Xiahou Wujiang's primordial spirit. Because his own mental strength was still somewhat connected to the golden light of the primordial spirit, Xiahou Wujiang also suffered some shock. This made him groan and take a few steps back, a look of shock in his eyes. To be able to cancel out the power of his primordial spirit without any effort, the other party's mental strength had obviously reached a certain level, even enough to contend with him. However, the power of the other party's killing fist had made Xiahou Wujiang think that the other party was definitely proficient in this kind of close combat killing technique. He did not expect the other party to even know mental secret techniques. Xiahou Wujiang thought to himself that this was not good, and his figure could not help but retreat. Although Xiahou Wujiang used to be arrogant to the point of conceit, after suffering 2 losses at the hands of Chu Xiu, he had some idea in his heart and would not try to be brave again. The imperial spirit art of their Xiahou clan was very easy to deal with when facing martial artists who were not proficient in primordial spirit secret techniques, and it was also very useful when facing martial artists who were proficient in primordial spirit secret techniques. Anyway, to the Xiahou clan, they did not feel that their imperial spirit art was weaker than anyone else's. What truly made the martial artists of the Xiahou clan feel troublesome was a martial artist like the person in front of them. In terms of mental strength, it did not matter even if the other party was slightly weaker than Xiahou Wujiang, as long as he could just barely resist the imperial spirit art. But if the other party was also proficient in powerful close combat killing techniques, then once the other party got close, what awaited the martial artists of the Xiahou clan would be a nightmare. Obviously, this was the case for Chu Xiu now. Xiahou Wujiang had given him so much trouble, and this time, Chu Xiu did not want to let Xiahou Wujiang off. Chu Xiu walked toward Xiahou Wujiang step by step, each step crossing a distance of several dozen feet. At this time, half of his body was Buddhist light, and the other half was demonic flames. Holy and evil intertwined, but it seemed extremely harmonious. His hand formed a seal, and as Chu Xiu's seal fell, the Buddhist light and demonic aura around him condensed into an evil phantom, solemn and dignified, but at the same time, filled with demonic flames. Great Vajra divine power, Mara Vajra form. Under the intertwining and crushing of the Buddhist light and demonic aura, Xiahou Wujiang was blasted back step by step. He did not have time to use his imperial spirit art before he was completely suppressed by the other party. Golden light spread all over Xiahou Wujiang's body, but it was not for attack, but for defense. The Xiahou clan's imperial spirit art was extremely invasive, and at this time, Xiahou Wujiang was forced by Chu Xiu to only be able to defend. It could be imagined how much pressure he was under now. Seeing the opponent in front of him closing in step by step, Xiahou Wujiang could not help but grit his teeth, and a ruthless look appeared in his eyes. Although there were not many Buddhist and demonic cultivators in the pugilistic world, there were still many, especially in the 6th demon sect. Almost all the martial artists from the 6th demon sect cultivated demonic and Buddhist cultivators at the same time. Therefore, Xiahou Wujiang had subconsciously regarded the other party as a martial artist from the 6th demon sect. Because the other party rarely appeared in the Central Plains, he did not know him. But right now, it was no longer important to see the other party's background. If he continued to be suppressed by the other party, he was afraid that he would not be able to wait for his father's rescue, and he would be in danger. Therefore, Xiahou Wujiang directly used the power of his primordial spirit to clash head-on with Chu Xiu. But because his own strength was too weak, he was still blasted back dozens of feet, and a mouthful of blood spurted out. However, Xiahou Wujiang seemed to have done it on purpose. He pulled his hands horizontally, and his stellar energy condensed into the shape of a zither string. As he infused all his mental strength into his hands, he plucked the zither string, and a series of explosive sounds came from Chu Xiu's ears. Imperial Spirit Guqin Sound. This technique of the Xiahou clan used stellar energy as the zither string, but in fact, it was played with mental strength, and every step was filled with murderous intent. But unfortunately it was still useless. The seals in Chu Xiu's hands changed, and from the Mara Dharma form to the Guardian Vajra, the demon-subduing pestle completely condensed from stellar energy came crashing down, completely smashing the stellar energy zither string formed by Xiahou Wujiang into pieces. Xiahou Wujiang did not have time to resist, and he suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. It was unknown whether he was really injured or just sullen. At this time, Xiahou Zhen saw that Xiahou Wujiang was beaten to the point of vomiting blood, and he simply could not imagine it. As a father, he naturally knew how much strength his son had, so Xiahou Zhen was also relieved. As long as he did not encounter the top 10 on the Longhu list, Xiahou Wujiang could win. But now, it was a slap in the face. Xiahou Wujiang seemed to have lost miserably, even in imminent danger, so Xiahou Zhen immediately wanted to rescue Xiahou Wujiang, but he was entangled by Sitali, who did not give him any chance at all, which made Xiahou Zhen even more anxious. He was this generation's patriarch of the Xiahou clan. In the next generation, Xiahou Zhen also wanted to support Xiahou Wujiang to this position, so that his bloodline would completely become the main bloodline of the Xiahou clan. Of course, the premise of this was that Xiahou Wujiang could be qualified for this position and could live long enough to take over this position. But now that Xiahou Wujiang was in imminent danger, Xiahou Zhen directly gritted his teeth and did not care about anything else. He had to rescue his son first. After all, he was the hope for the rest of his life. Although he had more than one child, Xiahou Wujiang was the only one with the talent to inherit the position of patriarch. Chapter 403. Xiahou Wujiang was in imminent danger. Xiahou Zhen looked coldly at Situ Li and shouted, "Does your phaseless demon sect really want to fight my Xiahou clan to the death?" Situ Li narrowed his eyes and sneered. "It's not that my phaseless demon sect wants to fight you, but your Xiahou clan wants to go against my demon Dao. You don't want your son to die? Fine, it's simple. Take your Xiahou clan's people and leave Floating Jade Mountain, and I'll immediately let go. Do you dare?" Xiahou Zhen's face was gloomy and he didn't say anything. Of course he didn't dare. It should be known that this was no longer a dispute between the 5 major sword sects and the demon Dao. The conflict between the two sides was on the surface, and it had developed into a war between the righteous and demonic sections. At this time, the forces participating in the war represented the righteous sections. Only a small number of existences like the World Alliance didn't make a move. Their Xiahou clan had already made a move, but they gave up halfway. What was this? Betraying the righteous sects? Their Xiahou clan's reputation would plummet. The Xiahou clan didn't belong to Xiahou Zhen alone. Therefore, any decision Xiahou Zhen made had to be in line with the Xiahou clan's interests. If Xiahou Zhen dared to escape Floating Jade Mountain with his people in order to save his son, it would affect the Xiahou clan's reputation. When Xiahou Zhen returned to the Xiahou clan, he could forget about being the Xiahou clan's patriarch. A person who disregarded the Xiahou clan's interests for his own selfish desires wasn't fit to be the Xiahou clan's patriarch. But of course, Xiahou Zhen couldn't allow his son to be killed by someone else. At this time, Xiahou Zhen suddenly thought of something and shouted at Xiahou Wujiang, "Run! Escape from Floating Jade Mountain!" The Xiahou clan couldn't run, but Xiahou Wujiang could. After all, he was only a junior martial artist and couldn't represent the entire Xiahou clan. If he ran before the battle, Xiahou Wujiang would only lose some reputation at most. Anyway, for a junior martial artist like him, there was still a chance to make up for his reputation in the future. Xiahou Wujiang was shocked. Even if Xiahou Zhen hadn't said it, he already wanted to run. The person in front of him had cultivated both strength and mental strength to the extreme, enough to crush Xiahou Wujiang in all aspects. Xiahou Wujiang wasn't an idiot. Going head-on against such an opponent was purely courting death. Hence, Xiahou Wujiang immediately turned around and fled without any hesitation. Seeing Xiahou Wujiang's actions, Chu Xiu sneered. If Xiahou Wujiang could still escape this time, then it would only be if he really had great luck on him. Although Xiahou Wujiang's realm was improving very quickly, in fact, in terms of combat power, Xiahou Wujiang was still not as good as Nie Donglu. His background and foundation were too weak. Xiahou Wujiang had stepped into the 5 Qi's origin realm because of external factors, and he hadn't had the time to train his own origin realm yet. Therefore, his current realm was a little shallow. Even if Chu Xiu couldn't use the Sky Demon Dance or the fast and slow 9 words formula in order to hide his identity, he could still easily crush Xiahou Wujiang. The devil Qi around Chu Xiu surged and shrouded him. At the same time, Chu Xiu's eyes also glowed with a hint of red. In an instant, he stepped into the selfless killing realm. His speed suddenly rose by a large margin, and he directly attacked Xiahou Wujiang. Berserk demonic qi and killing intent condensed around Chu Xiu's body as he continuously attacked Xiahou Wujiang. Xiahou Wujiang would spit out a mouthful of blood with almost every punch that landed. However, Xiahou Wujiang was really putting his life on the line in order to escape. Gritting his teeth, Xiahou Wujiang pointed a finger at his forehead. In an instant, his qi and blood mixed with golden light shone brightly. The Xiahou clan's method of burning their essence blood was also different from the others. The others only burned their essence blood, but the Xiahou clan's people burned both their essence blood and their essence soul. Although it consumed more of their essence blood, it was also more powerful. In the blink of an eye, Xiahou Wujiang's body actually bloomed with 7 rays of golden light, exploding around him. Their auras were exactly the same, and it was impossible to distinguish the real from the fake. Chu Xiu was not anxious at all. The murderous intent in his eyes faded, and what replaced it was a strange scene of the sun, moon, and stars rotating. Chu Xiu used the heaven's sun gazing at air technique to the extreme. The 7 figures in the golden light were almost visible, and there was no place to hide. Xiahou Wujiang's escape technique was called the soul transformation technique. It evolved thousands of divine thoughts, and it had no offensive power. It was purely prepared for escape. It could be said that even a martial arts grandmaster would not be able to see the mystery in it. Either your speed and strength were extremely fast, and you could catch up to those golden lights and shatter them one by one to see if they were real or fake, or you could only try your luck. Unfortunately, Xiahou Wujiang had encountered Chu Xiu. The heaven's sun gazing at air technique almost completely countered his Xiahou clan's technique. After catching up to Xiahou Wujiang's real body, Chu Xiu's fist landed. Before the Gang Qi had even reached his body, the powerful murderous intent had already made Xiahou Wujiang vomit blood and destroyed the meridians in his body. After burning his essence blood and spirit, Xiahou Wujiang's strength had been exhausted to the extreme. He was originally not a match for Chu Xiu, and now he could forget about fighting in close combat with Chu Xiu. However, Xiahou Wujiang was extremely unwilling. His final position had actually been destroyed by the person in front of him. This was simply impossible. Therefore, in Xiahou Wujiang's view, it could only be said that the person in front of him had better luck and happened to chase after the right person. But if there was a 1 in 7 chance that the other party could guess correctly with good luck, didn't that prove that the heavens wanted Xiahou Wujiang to die today? At this time, when Xiahou Zhen saw that Xiahou Wujiang could not even run away, he showed a competitive look on his face, and he shouted at Sitali, "Stop! My Xiahou clan is willing to withdraw from this righteous demonic war." Although Xiahou Zhen didn't have only one son, Xiahou Wujiang, Xiahou Zhen had raised Xiahou Wujiang from a young age. If it had been any of his other sons, Xiahou Zhen might have considered whether his identity as the family head or his son was more important. But now, it was Xiahou Wujiang, the Xiahou Wujiang whom he had brought with him since he was young, the Xiahou Wujiang whom he had the deepest feelings for. Xiahou Zhen didn't want to weigh the pros and cons anymore. He couldn't just watch his son die here. Even if the Xiahou clan investigated his responsibility afterwards, what could they do? At most, they would just move him to a position where he couldn't get any benefits and not let him continue to be the clan head. And with Xiahou Wujiang's current age and realm, it wouldn't be too difficult for him to become the new clan head in the future. Among the disciples of the same generation, no one could defeat Xiahou Wujiang. Anyway, as long as one was alive, there was always hope. However, Siddeley revealed a nasty smile at this time and said, "You want to withdraw now? Too late." Xiahou Zhen roared angrily, "Your phaseless demon sect is courting death." Situ Li said fearlessly, "In this world, there are many people who want my phaseless demon sect to die. Your Xiahou clan won't make a difference." What Situ Li said was true. Their phaseless demon sect was indeed not afraid of the Xiahou clan. The phaseless demon sect wholeheartedly wanted to rebuild the Kunlun devil cult, which could be said to be standing on the opposite side of the entire pugilistic world. Although everyone in the pugilistic world knew that this was basically impossible. So from the beginning, the phaseless demon sect was already prepared to face the hostility of the entire pugilistic world. Now, it didn't matter if the Xiahou clan was added or not. Most importantly, with the way the phaseless demon sect acted, even if the Xiahou clan wanted to find them for revenge, they wouldn't be able to find them. Meanwhile, on Xiahou Wujiang's side, he had been pushed to the extreme by Chu Xiu. Between life and death, Xiahou Wujiang fiercely clenched his teeth. His hands formed a complicated seal, and a strange symbol appeared between his eyebrows. Countless primordial spirit golden light gathered at one point, and the light shone brightly. In an instant, it shrouded Chu Xiu. Xiahou Wujiang had erupted all the power of his primordial spirit. He was completely prepared to use his own spiritual power to forcefully resist Chu Xiu's spiritual power. This was a method that would completely destroy both sides. Even if Xiahou Wujiang didn't die after this, his spiritual power would be completely destroyed. But unfortunately, if Xiahou Wujiang used this move at his peak, Chu Xiu would definitely choose to retreat and escape. Xiahou Wujiang wanted to fight with his life, but Chu Xiu didn't want to fight with him. But unfortunately, Xiahou Wujiang had already burned his blood essence just now, and the power of his primordial spirit had fallen by a large margin. At this time, even if he wanted to fight with his life, he already didn't have the capital to do so. Chu Xiu's eyes were like deep pools. He displayed the soul-shifting technique of extinguishing skies and extinguishing earth to the extreme. Shrouded in the primordial spirit golden light, he directly fought and strangled Xiahou Wujiang head-on. As soon as the spiritual power of both sides came into contact, Xiahou Wujiang let out a muffled groan, and then his eyes revealed a look of shock. He had already recognized Chu Xiu's identity. Spiritual power seemed to be invisible and intangible, but in fact, it had more characteristics than true qi. Of course, this characteristic could only be discerned by martial artists like the Xiahou clan, who specialized in spiritual power. Xiahou Wujiang had once competed with Chu Xiu's spiritual power at the God Weapon Conference. So now that the two sides' spiritual power clashed, he instantly recognized Chu Xiu's identity. This guy dressed as a demonic martial artist turned out to be Chu Xiu. Xiahou Wujiang wanted to shout and expose Chu Xiu's identity. This was a great battle between the righteous and demonic sections. As long as Chu Xiu's identity was exposed, there would be no place for him in the righteous sections. Unfortunately, all his spiritual power was entangled with Chu Xiu. Not to mention shouting, he couldn't even say a word. As the darkness in Chu Xiu's eyes became thicker and thicker, the spiritual power brought by the soul-shifting technique of extinguishing skies and extinguishing earth was completely displayed by Chu Xiu to the extreme. A soundless explosion came, and Xiahou Wujiang suddenly let out a muffled groan. His spiritual power was completely strangled, and his entire body was bleeding from all 7 apertures. In an instant, he lost his breath and fell to the ground, but there was still a trace of unwillingness in his eyes. With just one word, he could have ruined Chu Xiu's reputation. Chapter 404. Xiahou Wujiang was killed by Chu Xiu before he could say what he wanted to say, but Xiahou Zhen had already fallen into a violent rage at this time. He had been dormant in his youth, and only emerged in his middle age, becoming the leader of the Xiahou clan. Xiahou Zhen was also a person with great ambition. There was no main bloodline among the direct descendants of the Xiahou clan. In theory, as long as you were a martial artist of the Xiahou clan and performed well, you could become the leader of the clan. This system was actually very beneficial to the Xiahou clan. While it increased the competition, it could also select the truly excellent successors. But Xiahou Zhen had always wanted to make the Xiahou clan his own, to make all the elders who were in the way get out, and the entire Xiahou clan would have to listen to his bloodline. Unfortunately, Xiahou Zhen's dream was now shattered. Xiahou Wujiang had all kinds of flaws, but the only thing he had was his talent, which was enough to look down on all the talents of the younger generation of the Xiahou clan. Xiahou Zhen's other sons might be more sensible than Xiahou Wujiang, but in this Jianghu where strength determined success or failure, without strength, everything was empty talk. In a rage, Xiahou Zhen began to attack Sitali madly, wanting to finish him off and kill Chu Xiu. But seeing that he had achieved his goal, Sitali continued to fight and entangle him. The martial arts of the phaseless demon sect were extremely strange, and they were clearly very good at this kind of situation. At this time, on Chu Xiu's side, he had already killed one of the people he wanted to kill, but he did not recover his identity as Chu Xiu, and instead turned his gaze to Nye Donglu. For Chu Xiu, he was born in the Guanzhong torture room, and it did not matter whether he stood on the side of the righteous path or not. Even if he remained neutral like Xie Xiaolu and the other people of the World Alliance, no one would say anything about him. Just now, he had saved the people of Ba Mountain Sword Sect as a righteous person and killed Zhou Xiangzi. That was enough. It would not be good to be in the limelight anymore. However, Nie Dongliu's actions disappointed Chu Xiu. Compared to Xiahou Wujiang, Nie Donglu was much more cautious. He followed closely behind the northern Yan martial Dao masters and did not advance rashly. Instead, Chu Xiu could not find a chance to attack. Mr. Lu walked to Chu Xiu's side and said in a low voice, "This Nie Donglu is a character, just like his father, Nie Renlong, not to be trifled with. The Xiahou Wujiang you killed was at best an arrogant playboy who relied on his talent and identity. Without the background of the Xiahou clan, his achievements were limited. Nie Donglu, on the other hand, is not simple. Although he is now the young master of the Loyalty Village, he can still thrive in the Jianghu even without that identity." Chu Xiu nodded. He had enmity with Nie Donglu for so long, of course he knew what kind of person Nie Donglu was. That was why he wanted to find a chance to get rid of him. But now, it seemed that he would not have this chance. But at this time, Mr. Lu poked Chu Xiu and said, "You can't get rid of this enemy. Why don't you get someone else to do it? In any case, you have many chances to act here. No one will suspect you in the chaos." Chu Xiu was stunned. "You mean the people of Ba Mountain Sword Sect?" Mr. Lu smiled disdainfully. "Do you think the trash of Ba Mountain Sword Sect counts as your enemy? I am talking about that one." Chu Xiu thought about it and agreed. Looking at Tichurtsen's appearance, he knew what the Ba Mountain Sword Sect was like. This kind of person did not even qualify to be his enemy. Following the direction of Mr. Lu's finger, Mr. Lu was actually referring to an old monk who was exceptionally brave despite his old age. He had killed several demonic Dao cultivators in succession. Chu Xiu frowned and said, "Who is this old monk?" Mr. Lu laughed strangely. "You killed his disciple, but now you don't even recognize his master? He is the master of Monk Ming Chen, who died at your hands last time, Elder Hui Zhen of the Vajra Institute. This person doesn't have much of a reputation in the pugilistic world. In fact, he's a nobody in the entire Temple of Great Light. However, this guy is very experienced. Even the current Vajra Yard's first seat, Su Yen, was taken care of by him in the past." Chu Xiu nodded. He looked at Hui Zhen with a hint of murderous intent. His enmity with the Great Light Temple should have been resolved on the surface. After all, the first seat of the Great Light Temple's vain thought Zhenhao, Su Yun, had spoken. But in reality, the group of martial artists from the Great Light Temple still looked at Chu Xiu with displeasure. Furthermore, they were very displeased. Chu Xiu knew what position he held in the hearts of these martial artists from the Great Light Temple when Ming Chen's senior and junior brothers challenged him one after another in the arena. Hui Zhen did not act against him under the pressure of Su Yun, but Chu Xiu believed that as long as he was alive, Hui Zhen would not let go of the hatred of killing his disciple. Also, with this old monk's seniority in the Great Light Temple, if he really wanted to find trouble for him, then the trouble would be great. Mr. Lu stood next to Chu Xiu and asked, "Do you need help?" Chu Xiu looked around and said, "Not for now. Too many people will attract attention. Let the people of the Phaseless Demon Sect help me lure this old monk to the side. Just don't let the people of the Great Light Temple support him." Mr. Lu nodded. This kind of thing was what the Phaseless Demon Sect was good at. At this moment, Hui Zhen did not sense the killing intent that someone in the distance revealed towards him. He was fiercely attacking, killing the demonic martial artists in front of him. Although he was old, his Buddhist martial arts allowed him to display incomparably fierce and overbearing strength. This time, Hui Zhen was actually very sullen. Of course, he wanted to take revenge for killing his disciple. Even if it was not for himself, he wanted to give Ming Chen, who was still in the underworld, an explanation. However, it was a pity that he had already promised Su Yun to let go of this grudge. Moreover, if he made a move against Chu Xiu now, it would affect the reputation of the entire Great Light Temple. Hence, from the start of the World Sword Sect Conference until now, Hui Zhen did not plan to make a move. He even advised and suppressed the other warriors not to act impulsively. It was just that Hui Zhen did not want to attack, but Chu Xiu wanted to attack first to gain the upper hand. At this time, when Hui Zhen attacked and killed those demonic path warriors, He was abnormally fierce and ferocious. For him, this was also a way to vent. Buddhists could not kill innocent people. But for all Buddhist warriors, as long as they were from the demonic path, none of them were innocent. Therefore, killing them was actually accumulating merit. It was not breaking the rules, but saving people. At this time, Huizhen was killing with this kind of mentality. In fact, he was also venting. The phaseless demon sect even used this mentality to lead Huizhen to the edge, away from the Great Light Temple. Then they retreated. Huizhen really did not notice this and was still attacking crazily. But at this time, Chu Xiu's figure suddenly appeared behind Huizhen. He took a step forward and the demonic qi and killing intent gathered around him. It turned into the annihilating heaven and earth, annihilating oblivion killing fist. It was simply a naked sneak attack. The people of the righteous path never liked to talk about rules with the demonic path warriors. Now that Chu Xiu attacked Huizhen, of course, there was no need to talk about those rules. Huizhen's whole body was full of Buddha's light. A Vajra shadow that was completely condensed from stellar energy appeared behind Huizhen. His hands were put together, and the Buddha's light was full. It collided with this palm. Immediately, the demonic blood qi scattered, but the Vajra shadow also faded. And the warriors who were struggling under Huizhen's hands just now were relieved. At the same time, they secretly cursed this old monk. He was even more ruthless than the demonic path. Once the fight started, it was completely a crazy stance of fighting with his life. Among the warriors who fought with Huizhen, there were people from the bright demon lineage and people from the hidden demon lineage. They had a good impression of Chu Xiu. After all, this person was in the limelight during the demonic path conference. This was the representative of the shadow demon sect, and he was even valued by the phaseless demon sect. With the power of 5 Qi's origin realm, he was able to defeat the famous 5 poison sects Chou Xiangzi. He was obviously an impressive figure. Huizhen turned his head and looked at Chu Xiu. He said coldly, "Which demonic path sorcerer are you from? Go down and ask the Buddha." The Mahavajra shadow appeared behind Chu Xiu. The evil demonic qi intertwined with the Buddha's light. With a palm strike, 2 completely different powers suddenly exploded and attacked Huizhen. Seeing this, Huizhen could not help but reveal a deep anger in his eyes. "So you're actually a demonic path sorcerer from the 6th demon sect." In the Jianghu, as long as Buddhist and demonic path cultivators were mentioned, almost everyone would subconsciously think of the 6th demon sect. As martial art practitioners of the Buddhist sects, the Great Light Temple naturally loathed sects like the 6th heavenly demon sect that could interfere with their Buddhist cultivation. They even viewed them as a thorn in their side. "You guessed wrong, so there's no reward." Chu Xiu took a step forward. The demonic qi and Buddha's light condensed to form an evil demon god shadow. Both of his hands formed a fist seal and landed. Half of it was a monstrous demonic qi, while the other half was a dazzling Buddha's light. It actually forced Huizhen to retreat continuously. There were no weaklings among the monks from the Great Light Temple. Huizhen was naturally the same. In his early years, he even had the ability to challenge the Vajra institution's first seat. Unfortunately, his mental state cultivation was not up to the mark. In the end, he stopped at the martial arts grandmaster realm. There was almost no hope for him to break through in this lifetime. Moreover, Huizhen was already old now. His qi and blood had deteriorated greatly. For a sect like the Great Light Temple that specialized in body refining techniques, aging was definitely the most terrifying thing. Even if Chu Xiu needed to conceal his identity and could not use the fast and slow 9 words formula or his own saber techniques, he could still suppress Huizhen in terms of pure strength. When the other demonic path martial artists saw that Chu Xiu alone could match or even suppress Huizhen, they also retreated and did not plan to get involved. This rising star of the demonic path, Lin Yi, was indeed very powerful. He was even able to suppress a veteran martial art practitioner from the Temple of Great Light. Looking at his power, he did not lose to Yi Tianxie from the evil pole sect, who was on a killing spree with his blood spear. Chapter 405. Among the younger generation of the diabolism, the one who performed the best was the holy maiden of the moon-worshipping cult. Of course, no one knew how old she was, but the moon-worshipping cult announced that the holy maiden of this generation had yet to mature, so she was probably still young. Besides the holy maiden of the moon-worshipping cult, Yi Tianxia's performance was the most dazzling. His own strength was unparalleled, and with the blood dragon spear in his hand, he was invincible. Almost all the warriors at the Five Qis origin realm could not withstand 3 strikes from his spear. After defeating his opponent, Yi Tianxia subconsciously looked over at Chu Xiu. After all, he had fought with Chu Xiu during the diabolism meeting. However, that was just a test, and not the true strength of both parties. Hence, Yi Tianxia also wanted to see how strong this Lin Yi was. However, when he saw the intense battle between Chu Xiu and Hui Zhen in the distance, Yi Tianxia raised his dashing eyebrows. Where did this Lin Yi come from? He was actually able to fight head-on with a monk from the Great Light Temple to this extent. Although he was just an old monk, he was still a warrior at the unity of heaven and man realm from the Great Light Temple. This made Yi Tianxia feel a little pressured. He was an elite secretly cultivated by the Omniscient sect. It could be said that the entire Omniscient sect had devoted all its resources to him, just so that he could rise. In fact, Yi Tianxia himself thought so too. In his opinion, the younger generation of the diabolism should respect him. His goal was to become an existence like Fang Qishao and Zhang Qingzhen. Unfortunately, he had suffered some setbacks the first time he stepped out of the Omniscient sect. First, there was Lin Yi, whose strength was unfathomable in the diabolism. Then, there was the holy maiden of the moon-worshipping cult whose strength was also unfathomable. On the side of the righteous path, although Zhang Qingzhen and Zhong Xian did not come, Fang Qishao, who was ranked 3rd, had terrifying strength. At least, before Yi Tianxia stepped into the unity of heaven and man realm, he would not have the courage to attack Fang Qishao. Shaking his head, Yi Tianxia cast these useless emotions aside. Yi Tianxia was a unique existence in Jianghu for practicing the skills of a ferocious beast as a human. He believed that his future would definitely not be limited to this. He might not be able to defeat 7th young Master Fang and the others now, but in the future, these people would definitely be trampled under his feet. At this time, Chu Xiu did not know what Yi Tianxia was thinking. He was fighting fiercely with Hui Zhen. Although the old monk was old, he still retained a very strong combat power. The punch from his skinny arm still had the power to shake mountains. Sensing the killing intent emanating from Chu Xiu's body, Hui Zhen sneered and said, "This old monk has eradicated countless villains and evildoers like you in this lifetime. I don't even know how many of those devil path experts who have been famous for a long time have died in my hands. A little devil brat like you wants to kill me? Dream on." As soon as he finished speaking, the Buddha aura around Hui Zhen's body erupted, and a 4-armed, 2-faced Vajra shadow faintly condensed behind him. Among the Vajra shadow, the first side was a Vajra with angry eyes, fierce and brutal. The other side was a solemn bodhisattva, vast and compassionate, bemoaning the state of the universe and pitying the people. This was the true essence of the furious Vajra Heart Sutra. The heart of a bodhisattva, the means of a Vajra. Kill one person to save 10. The furious Vajra Heart Sutra was only to save people, not to kill. If one fell into anger, one would fall into a disadvantageous position, and it would be easier for one to go berserk. The Vajra department had the largest number of people among the 6 major martial arts departments of the Great Light Temple, but it was not the strongest. The reason was that although the monks of the Vajra department could cultivate faster in the early stages, there were very few martial artists who could truly comprehend the true essence of the furious Vajra Heart Sutra. Now that the Vajra department's first seat Su Yan had comprehended it, Hui Zhen had also comprehended it. However, he had comprehended it a little too late. His lifespan was coming to an end, and his qi and blood were declining. He no longer had the qualifications to become a martial arts master. The Vajra department's 2-faced Vajra, which was glowing with resplendent Buddha light, emitted an imposing aura. As Su Yan's punches landed, the 2-faced Vajra also condensed a huge palm of righteous qi, which blasted towards Chu Xiu. Hui Zhen's sudden outburst of power was shocking. Chu Xiu's figure retreated quickly, and his hands formed a seal. A blurry Buddha shadow appeared behind him, and its appearance could not be seen clearly. However, it gave off an extremely huge feeling, as though it could contain all things. Vajra divine power, sea of all rivers aspect. Hui Zhen's series of violent attacks were all contained by Chu Xiu's sea of all rivers aspect. However, Chu Xiu was not familiar with using this dharma, and its defensive ability was far weaker than Chu Xiu's Dugusil. It only lasted for a short while before it was completely defeated by Hui Zhen. However, this was enough. At this moment, Chu Xiu had already condensed his devil qi to the extreme, and the killing intent of the selfless killing fist fused with the monstrous devil qi. As Chu Xiu's punch landed, a realistic yet illusory devil god's roar rang out around him. When this punch landed, the devil qi and evil qi suddenly erupted, and the Buddha light was torn apart. The two-faced Vajra department behind Hui Zhen immediately collapsed. Moreover, this was not the end. An angry Wisdom King's shadow appeared behind Chu Xiu, and a righteous Qi palm print landed, directly blasting Hui Zhen away, causing him to spit out a mouthful of blood. Hell-suppressing Wisdom King form. Hui Zhen's eyes revealed a look of horror. This is my Buddhist cultivation technique. Who exactly are you? In fact, when Chu Xiu had just made his move, Hui Zhen had already sensed a trace of Buddhist cultivation technique from the person in front of him. Although the great Vajra divine power mainly cultivated one's own strength, Hui Zhen could still sense some traces of Buddhist cultivation technique. However, later on, Chu Xiu had used the Mara Vajra form, which also made Hui Zhen subconsciously think that Chu Xiu was a member of the sixth demon sect. It was not until now that Chu Xiu had used the hell-suppressing Wisdom King form that Hui Zhen was sure that this Chu Xiu had definitely cultivated Buddhist cultivation technique. Chu Xiu's figure was like the wind, devil qi surging, and his killing intent exploding. As he attacked wildly, he said, "I've said it before, go down and ask your Buddha." However, there doesn't seem to be any Buddha down there. It's the same if you ask Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva. They are all from your Buddhist lineage. I believe he will be very happy to answer your questions. Hui Zhen was forced to retreat step by Chu Xiu's attacks. His internal organs were shaken, and while resisting, blood could not help but flow out of his mouth. Chu Xiu's actions could be considered bullying the elderly, constantly depleting the other party's strength and vitality. For a martial artist like Hui Zhen who was at the end of his lifespan, he was bound to become weaker the more he fought. However, Chu Xiu did not feel guilty. Chu Xiu had never taken the so-called dignity of the martial Dao seriously. To him, the martial Dao was just a method to kill his enemies. If he won, he would stand. If he died, he would lie down. As long as he could get rid of the enemy in front of him, Chu Xiu had always been unscrupulous. This old monk Hui Zhen had a grudge with him for killing his disciple. It could be said that they could not live under the same sky. Although Chu Xiu was using Guanxiu to temporarily suppress this matter, as long as this old monk Hui Zhen was still alive, he was like a time bomb that could suddenly explode at any time. After being continuously suppressed by Chu Xiu, Hui Zhen's eyes also revealed a hint of determination. People were afraid of death, but Hui Zhen was not. In theory, a martial artist at the unity of heaven and man realm could live for 200 years, but in reality, there were not many who could live to 200 years old. Hui Zhen had already lived for more than 180 years, which was almost enough. Back when he was at the Great Light Temple, he had already felt that his lifespan was about to be exhausted. He had long been prepared to wait for death. However, Hui Zhen's only pity was that his disciple, Ming Chen, had clearly improved his talent and strength, but in the end he had died a violent death. Hui Zhen could not avenge Ming Chen, but he believed that the others in the Vajra Institute would not forget. Now, this battlefield of the righteous and demonic Dao war on floating Jade Mountain was not a bad choice as his final resting place. Hui Zhen had joined the Great Light Temple since he was young. He had spent his entire life exterminating demons and protecting the Dao, killing countless evil demons and murderers. Now that he could drag a demonic Dao expert to the grave with him, He died a worthy death. Every person who was not afraid of death was very terrifying. Even if Hui Zhen's qi and blood were currently declining, once he began to fight with his life on the line, not to mention Chu Xiu who could not unleash his full strength, even Chu Xiu at his peak would have to retreat. Hui Zhen put his palms together, and his entire body burned with a scorching Buddha's flame, which rose into the sky and enveloped Hui Zhen within it. The Buddha's flame burned the last of Hui Zhen's qi, blood, and essence. However, Hui Zhen was not as ferocious and terrifying as other martial artists who burned their qi and blood to fight for their lives. Instead, his originally shriveled body was filled with strength, as though he had recovered to the peak of his prime. Nirvana and Buddhahood, the ultimate sublimation. Hui Zhen's nirvana flame could not allow him to be reborn, but it could allow him to return to his peak for a period of time. Although it was only for a short period of time, it was enough for Hui Zhen. As the palm fell, the huge Vajra palm print fell with a loud bang, accompanied by a scorching flame and made a loud sonic boom. The strong pressure caused Chu Xiu to retreat step by step. He condensed the form of all rivers into the sea to resist, but it was almost instantly destroyed by this palm. The strong palm print did not seem to have the slightest hindrance as it attacked towards Chu Xiu. Frowning, Chu Xiu did not retreat, but advanced instead. Since he could not avoid it, then he would take it head-on. The devil's qi and blood condensed into one, and as the fist fell, there was a faint wail of evil spirits and the roar of demons. The fist that condensed the strength of Chu Xiu's entire body collided with Hui Zhen's palm, and suddenly there was a loud bang. Hui Zhen's figure took a step back, while Chu Xiu flew back more than 10 feet, letting out a muffled groan. Under his black iron mask, a trace of blood had already seeped out. At his peak, Hui Zhen was a great expert in the oneness of heaven and men realm, and he even had the strength to break through to the martial Dao Grandmaster realm. In other words, even if Hui Zhen was compared to the current Mr. Liu at his peak, he was probably not much better. Fighting against such an existence, Chu Xiu was at a disadvantage in all aspects. On the other hand, Hui Zhen did not stop moving and directly attacked Chu Xiu again. He did not have much time left. The boundless Buddha's flame condensed into the shape of a Buddhist commandment blade, which was held in Hui Zhen's hand. The Vajra blade with a merciful heart. The merciful demon slayer blade. Hui Zhen had practiced this blade for hundreds of years, but in the end he abandoned the blade, because the key to this blade was not the blade, but the merciful and murderous blade intent. Chapter 406. Hui Zhen's merciful demon slayer saber had been cultivated for hundreds of years. This saber technique was not very famous in the Great Light Temple. It was evolved from the Great Light Temple's merciful saber, and it was considered a mid-level martial arts technique. However, any martial arts technique that had been cultivated for hundreds of years was extremely terrifying. Hui Zhen's merciful demon slayer saber was such a technique. The saber fell. Although this saber carried a majestic and powerful force, the core of it was merciful to stop killing. To stop killing by killing, to save the world. The moment Chu Xiu was targeted by the merciful demon slayer's saber, his figure began to retreat. Hui Zhen, the old monk, wanted to fight to the death with him, but Chu Xiu did not want to fight to the death with Hui Zhen. He was here to resolve trouble, not to cause trouble. Based on Hui Zhen's current state, even if Chu Xiu were to immediately escape, Hui Zhen, who had already ignited his blood essence, would not be able to return to the Temple of Great Light alive. However, it was obvious that Hui Zhen did not think so. He had made up his mind to kill. Perhaps from Hui Zhen's point of view, it was already fortunate that he could fight to the death with these demonic slayers on the battlefield and not on a bed. If he could drag this demonic slayer down with him, it would be a great blessing. All the demonic qi and evil qi around Chu Xiu gathered into one and exploded. However, they were all extinguished by the saber. The power of this saber was somewhat beyond Chu Xiu's imagination. This old monk's desperate attack was truly terrifying. Did he have to return to his original identity? Chu Xiu squinted his eyes and suddenly took a step forward. He performed the heaven's sun gazing at air. In Chu Xiu's eyes, Hui Zhen's saber was like a dense silk thread that attacked him from all directions. Chu Xiu had already performed the heaven's sun gazing at air to the extreme. Countless possible trajectories in the future were deduced by Chu Xiu, but 99% of the results were that he would not be able to block it. Even if he could block the rest, the price he had to pay would not be low. There was no perfect technique in this world. However, with Chu Xiu's current strength, he could not find a loophole in Hui Zhen's technique. Or rather, even if he found a loophole, he could not take advantage of it. The heaven's sun gazing at air was only an auxiliary technique. It could tell you the future, but the one who truly changed the future was yourself. The heaven's sun gazing at air was only an auxiliary type technique. At this moment, Chu Xiu suddenly thought of something. He abruptly raised his head and used his original tone to speak into Hui Zhen's ear. As a master, you're much stronger than your disciple. Back then, when I killed your disciple, I didn't use much strength, but now you're able to force me to this extent. It's not easy at all. Hui Zhen's heart suddenly trembled when she heard this voice. Her gaze towards Chu Xiu was filled with shock. Although Hui Zhen had not made a move in the arena earlier, he had heard Chu Xiu's voice. Thus, he had almost instantly figured out who the person in front of him was. In an instant, countless thoughts flashed through Hui Zhen's mind. Some were happy while some were angry. He was happy that he could really kill Chu Xiu this time and avenge his disciple. He was angry that Chu Xiu was so bold. He turned out to be a member of the Diabolism. The righteous and Diabolism were irreconcilable. If he had known that Chu Xiu was a member of the Diabolism, he would not have been unable to avenge his disciple for such a long time. The Guanzhong torture room's torturer, Chu Xiu, killing Ming Chen, and the Diabolism's murderer, Chu Xiu, killing Ming Chen were two different things. If he had known Chu Xiu's identity, even if Su Yun personally came to plead for him, Chu Xiu would definitely die. However, Hui Zhen did not realize that he had thought so many things in the moment of the battle. This also caused a slight change in the momentum of the knife in his hand. It was a very subtle pause and change. If it had been before, Chu Xiu would never have noticed such a subtle change. However, when Chu Xiu used the heaven sun gazing at air skill to fight with Fang Qishao's karma swordsmanship, his own cultivation of the heaven's sun gazing at air skill could be said to have made great progress. At this moment, Chu Xiu had already grasped that subtle change. In an instant, Chu Xiu straightened his palm as a knife. The power of his qi and blood spread and burned. It intertwined with the devil qi and turned into a dazzling devil knife that slashed down. Chu Xiu would rarely burn his qi and blood. He was a person who dared to fight with his life in times of danger, but at the same time, he was also a very rational person. Burning his qi and blood would not only cause internal injuries and damage his foundation, but it would also cause his strength to drop to the extreme in a short time. But now, in the face of the old monk Hui Zhen, Chu Xiu had to burn his essence blood in order to be safe. Chu Xiu grasped that slight loophole. Under the surging devil knife, the qi and blood mixed with devil qi forcibly tore apart Hui Zhen's knife force and cut his mercy knife into pieces. The devil qi and evil qi entered Hui Zhen's body and left a hideous knife mark on Hui Zhen's chest. He was directly sent flying. A loud noise was heard and Hui Zhen fell to the ground. His eyes showed a hint of unwillingness and relief. In the end, he was no longer alive. As a master, Hui Zhen was not able to avenge his disciple until the last moment of his life. This was Hui Zhen's unwillingness. But as for Hui Zhen himself, he had fought for the Great Light Temple his whole life. He eliminated the devil and protected the Tao. At this time, dying on the battlefield of the righteous and demonic path was considered a perfect achievement. In this life, he would no longer have to worry about all kinds of Jianghu killings. It could be considered a release. At this time, Hui Zhen's death also attracted the attention of many people present. The disciples of the Great Light Temple were all fiercely fighting with the demonic path ancient martial art practitioners present. Apart from the people from the 5 major sword sects, they were the ones who fought the most vigorously. Those who did not know would have thought that this righteous and demonic path great battle was started by them. When Hui Zhen died, Neither Su Yan nor Su Du noticed. At this time, they were all fiercely fighting with the demonic path grandmaster in front of them. It was really a battle of life and death. They were not like Xiahou before his son died, who held back and went easy on him. Therefore, they did not pay attention to what was happening in front of them. But as the other ancient martial art practitioners from the Great Light Temple shouted, they realized that Hui Zhen had actually died here. A hint of anger appeared in Su Yan's eyes. Although Hui Zhen was 1 generation younger than him, he had taken good care of him when he was young. He had brought Hui Zhen here to let him relax and forget about Mingxin's death. He did not expect Hui Zhen to die on floating Jade Mountain just like that. This made Su Yan feel that Hui Zhen's death was caused by him. Therefore, Su Yan even wanted to immediately kill Chu Xiu. However, his opponent was a martial Dao grandmaster from the 6th Demon Sect. The strength of the 6th Demon Sect's ancient martial art practitioners might be a little weaker in a head-on fight, but when combined with their strange methods, they were very troublesome to deal with, leaving people helpless. Just by looking at the battle between Shen Baochen and the sect leader of the 6th Demon Sect, Yi Buoxuan, anyone with a discerning eye could see that Shen Baochen's strength was actually far superior to Yi Buoxuan's. In the end, he was entangled by Yi Buoxuan for such a long time. One could imagine how difficult it was to deal with the 6th Demon Sect in this aspect. Su Yan was about to break free, but he was instantly stopped by the martial Dao grandmaster from the 6th Demon Sect. This made him furious, but there was nothing he could do. On the other side, after killing Hui Zhen, Chu Xiu also suffered some damage to his vitality. At the same time, he also felt a powerful pressure and killing intent landing on him. It did not feel good to be targeted by a martial Dao grandmaster powerhouse. Chu Xiu also had a premonition that he should keep a low profile. Therefore, Chu Xiu directly turned around and fled. He informed Mr. Liu and asked the people from the Phaseless Demon Sect to cover him while he fled to the edge, changed his clothes, and took off his mask. He became the Chu Xiu from the Guanzhong torture room again, except that his face was slightly paler than before. After changing back to his original identity, Chu Xiu did not continue to attack. Instead, he moved closer to the people from the World Alliance. The entire floating Jade Mountain was in a state of chaos. Only the people from the World Alliance and a few other sects, as well as famous rogue cultivators, wanted to maintain a neutral stance, so they did not attack. The righteous and demon sects did not make things difficult for them either. The people from the 5 great sword sects wanted to drag people down with them. It was enough that there were so many righteous sects participating, so they did not care about their numbers. The people from the demon sect were not idiots. They really did not want to provoke anyone. This time, the martial artists from the demon sect were only here for the demonic creation flag. Since the people from the World Alliance were not going to attack, they had nothing better to do than to provoke them. Therefore, in the entire floating Jade Mountain, there was only this small area that was peaceful. At this moment, seeing Chu Xiu come over with a pale face, as if he had overexerted himself, Xie Xiaolu was surprised. He was about to open his mouth to ask something, but he swallowed the words that were just about to leave his mouth. Xie Xiaolu was a man of few words, but he was also a discerning person. He knew what to ask and what not to ask. The battle between the righteous and demon sects was a complete mess. Who knew who Chu Xiu had gone to kill? Naturally, since Chu Xiu had not called for him, he would not say anything. Therefore, the question he was about to ask turned into a casual chat. Brother Chu, both the righteous and demon sects have sent out so many experts. Who do you think will win in the end? Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes. There is no winner. Both sides are losers. Xie Xiaolu was stunned. He did not understand why Chu Xiu would say that. Either they won or they lost or they tied. In the end, Chu Xiu said that both sides lost. What did that mean? However, before Xie Xiaolu could ask any questions, Chu Xiu said, "Just wait and see. It is almost over. When the time comes, the results will naturally be clear." The result of this righteous and demon sects war was not something Chu Xiu said. It was bound to happen. Chu Xiu's arrival caused some changes to the righteous and demon sects war. Perhaps those who should have died did not die, but those who should have lived died. Those who should have come did not, but many who should not have come did. However, Chu Xiu's butterfly effect was limited. He could only influence a small number of people. For example, Dong Huang Tai, an existence at the true fire soul refinement realm, Chu Xiu definitely could not influence him. The true power ratio between the righteous and demon sects had not changed, so the final result should not have changed. Chapter 407. Not long after Chu Xiu finished speaking to Xie Xiaolu, the situation on the battlefield changed, and this change started from Dong Huang Tai's side. In reality, Dong Huang Tai rarely fought in the Jianghu. The last time he fought was when he fought against the Great Light Temple over 20 years ago, so his ranking on the Longhu leaderboard had already been erased by Wind's sweeping tower. Many people in the Jianghu knew that this generation's Dong Huang Tai was very strong, but no one knew exactly how strong he was. In addition, the current leader of the moon-worshipping cult, Yi Shaonan, was just too strong. The moon-worshipping cult was already the #1 sect in the demonic path, and Yi Shaonan was naturally the #1 person in the demonic path. Under the shadow of a powerhouse of this level, no matter what Dong Huang Tai did, it was inconspicuous. No matter how many halos he had, they would all be overshadowed by Yi Shaonan. It was only now that everyone knew why Dong Huang Tai was known as the strongest Dong Huang Tai in history. More than 200 years ago, the famous Jianan king, Du Li, was suppressed to the extreme by Dong Huang Tai, and he could barely fight back. Later, Wind and Cloud Sword Mound even invited the world-famous murderous weapon, Decimating Abyss, to be powered by the blood of the previous leader of Wind and Cloud Sword Mound, the personal disciple of the old sword god Guemo Yanji. They worked together to kill Dong Huang Tai, but they could only barely hold on. But now, that stalemate was broken by Dong Huang Tai. Perhaps Dong Huang Tai was getting impatient with the stalemate, so he finally used his trump card. Amidst the powerful sword chi of Du Li and Decimating Abyss, Dong Huang Tai's wide sleeves folded up. As his body slowly turned, black demonic flames were flung out from his wide sleeves. The demonic flames could burn the heavens and devour the earth, using everything as nourishment. Whether it was the world's Yuan Qi or Du Li's sword Qi, everything could be devoured by the demonic flames. In the end, the overwhelming demonic flames had even enveloped more than half of floating Jade Mountain, as if the sun had fallen. Dong Huang Tai stood in the center of the demonic flames. Everyone could only see a black shadow controlling the demonic flames, like a god or a demon. The boundless devil flames devoured Du Li's sword energy and enveloped his entire body. Even the power of the ominous weapon, Decimating Abyss, was engulfed by the devil flames. Even the body of the sword showed signs of melting. Yanji suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood and his face turned extremely pale. In front of that terrifying devil flame, his connection with the extinguishing abyss sword had been completely severed. What kind of martial arts is this? Du Li couldn't help but shout out in shock. The warriors of the 5 major sword sects and the righteous path were all shocked. They were not making a fuss, but they had never seen or even heard of the martial arts that Dong Huang Tai displayed. Dong Huang Tai stood in the center of the boundless devil flames and said indifferently, "Cult Master's Heaven-Mending Heart Sutra is world-shaking and makes ghosts and gods weep. How is my burning sky treasured mirror now? Although I am not as brilliant as the sect master, this burning sky treasure mirror is the result of 100 years of dedicated research by combining the martial arts of the Eastern Emperor Tai of the moon-worshipping cult and countless ancient books. It was only a few years ago that I finally completed it. Du Li, and that little kid who controls the Decimating Abyss sword, you can be proud, because you are the first people in the entire Jianghu to experience the power of the burning sky mirror." Hearing this, everyone present fell silent. Moon-worshipping cult's momentum had been formed. A sect's strength was never because of one person, but because of a group of people. In the past, Du Weiwa was invincible in the world. But after Du Weiwa was gone, the Kunlun demon sect was able to single-handedly fight against the entire pugilistic world. Now the world knew that cult master Yi Shaonan was incomparably powerful, and even defeated countless great light temple masters in a battle 20 years ago. Now he was ranked on the legendary list, and could be said to be a top powerhouse in the Jianghu. But moon-worshipping cult strength was also due to the contributions of other people. Yi Xiaonan's Heaven-Mending Heart Sutra was not passed down from ancient times, but was continuously researched and supplemented by successive cult masters. Finally, in Yi Xiaonan's generation, it was finally perfected and successfully cultivated. It had the shocking power to destroy the world, mend the heavens, and reverse the universe. And now, Dong Huangtai's Burning Sky Mirror was clearly the same. It was created by him based on the techniques and ancient books of Dong Huangtai. It was incomparably powerful, and now it seemed to have the power to burn the heavens and devour the earth. Creating a cultivation method was very simple. Let alone a martial Dao grandmaster, even an ordinary martial artist could occasionally have a flash of inspiration and create some moves. However, the difference was whether the cultivation method you created was strong enough and whether it was qualified to be passed down. Predecessors were not necessarily stronger than modern people, and ancient techniques were not necessarily stronger than the techniques created and researched by modern martial artists. It was just that the techniques that could be passed down from ancient times were all fine products. But whether it was ancient times or now, a martial artist who could create a powerful technique must be a martial arts master with amazing talent. Yi Xiaonan was such an existence, and so was Dong Huangtai. Dong Huangtai and the other 9 god Magisprius were named after the 9 gods in the legends of the Chu land. Legend had it that Dong Huangtai was the sun god, the emperor who controlled the power of the sun, and so on. So the burning sky mirror that Dong Huangtai had created could be said to be specially created for god Magispriists of Dong Huangtai's lineage. Even if Dong Huangtai died, the next generation of Dong Huangtai could still cultivate the burning sky mirror. It could be said that Dong Huangtai alone had raised the strength of all the Dong Huangtai of moon-worshipping cult by a large margin. For the current righteous sects, they did not know whether the devil path had risen or not, but the strength of moon-worshipping cult had far exceeded their imagination. And just as everyone was still in shock, Dong Huangtai's figure rose into the air, and the burning sky demon flame around him condensed into a point and exploded with a loud bang. Du Guli could not hold on any longer. His sword momentum collapsed, and his figure was sent flying by Dong Huangtai. He spat out a mouthful of blood, and his face was pale. His burning sky sword technique was also incomparably powerful, but it was also a flame. Now, the burning sky sword technique was suppressed to the extreme by Dong Huangtai's burning sky mirror. Perhaps there was a reason for this, but the most fundamental reason was still the person. They were both refined by true fire, but he, Du Guli, was not as good as Dong Huangtai. And at this time, because the extinguishing abyss sword was no longer under Yanji's control, it was still flying around randomly. Dong Huangtai coldly snorted, and the burning sky demon flame completely enveloped the extinguishing abyss sword. In an instant, a powerful heat descended, and actually completely melted the extinguishing abyss sword. With a wave of one hand, the extinguishing abyss sword that had already turned into a ball of molten iron was remolded. A long blade covered in black flames was born from the demonic flames, and Dong Huangtai grabbed it in his hand. In an instant, a ferocious aura erupted. This extinguishing abyss sword, which even swordsmiths could not refine in the past, was now completely melted in the hands of Dong Huangtai's burning sky demon flame, and was even remolded. Dong Huangtai said indifferently, "This extinguishing abyss sword is not bad. Your storm sword tomb has been keeping it for so many years, but you still haven't figured it out. Now, it's time for a new owner. From now on, there will no longer be a extinguishing abyss sword in the martial world, only a burning sky blade." On the side of the righteous sects, their faces were ashen, especially those from the 5 great sword sects. This time, they were defeated, completely defeated. Du Guli had been severely injured, and Storm Sword Tomb had also lost their extinguishing abyss sword. They had lost miserably. However, at this moment, Shen Baochen, who had been fighting with Yi Buoxuan of the 6th demon sect, suddenly exploded. Shen Baochen was already very impatient with Yi Buxuan. Coupled with the fact that Duguli had actually been defeated, he had no choice but to use his trump card. Shen Baochen's sword and bamboo flute hung on his body all year round. Everyone thought that the bamboo flute was just something that Shen Baochen usually played with, but now, Shen Baochen held the bamboo flute in his hand and began to play it. The moment the sound rang out, Yi Buxuan's expression suddenly changed. This was because what Shen Baochen was playing was not the pleasant sound of the flute, but a murderous sword dance. The sound of the flute transformed into countless hazy shadows. These shadows circled between the heavens and the earth, using their thoughts to draw upon the power of the heavens and earth to transform into dancing swords. Thousands of swords merged into one, the Life Sword Dance. Under the Life Sword Dance, Yi Buxuan's 6 heavens of the Desire Realm was completely shattered. The Life Sword Dance encompassed and destroyed everything. Yi Buxuan's techniques could not defend against it at all. In the sword dance, Yi Buxuan retreated step by step. The worlds in front of him evolved and collapsed, but he was still killed until he vomited blood and retreated. His strength was originally not as good as Shen Baochen's. Just now, they had only been in a stalemate. However, now that Shen Baochen had suddenly displayed his might, he could no longer hold on. The burning sky demon flame descended. The pitch-black demon flame collided with the Life Sword Dance. The demon flame burned the sky and finally blocked the killing power of the sword dance. However, the burning sky demon flame that could melt everything could not melt Shen Baochen's Life Sword Dance. Donghuang Tai narrowed his eyes and looked at Shen Baochen. This is formed from the mental imprints and sword will left behind by the past cultivators of the Forgotten Sword Hut? The Life Sword Dance. It is just an external object. They are already dead, but in the end, they still have to fight to the death for unfilial descendants like you. You righteous sects are even crueler than the demonic path. Shen Baochen held the bamboo flute in his hand and said lightly, "The ancestors of the Forgotten Sword Hut left this Life Sword Dance to protect the common people. They have the common people in their hearts, which is why they are so obsessed. To let it be covered in dust in the ancestral hall is a great disrespect to the ancestors." Donghuang Tai raised his eyebrows. Just now, he had only casually mocked him. However, he also knew that this was a trump card left behind by the ancestors of the Forgotten Sword Hut. In the entire Forgotten Sword Hut, other than Shen Baochen, probably no one else could use this thing. To activate the mental imprints and sword will left behind by all the past cultivators of the Forgotten Sword Hut, one must have a powerful cultivation in the way of the sword and a clear sword heart that combined all the swordsmanship. Otherwise, once one of the swordsmanship clashed with you, not only would it hurt you, but it would also destroy the trump card left behind by the ancestors of the Forgotten Sword Hut. Chapter 408. The battle between the orthodox and diabolical lineages had reached its most intense moment. Duguli had been severely injured by Donghuang Tai, while Yi Buxuan had been injured by Shen Baochen. On the surface, both sides seemed to have suffered about the same amount of damage. The martial Dao grandmasters on both sides were already injured. There were also countless warriors at the Unity of Heaven and Man realm or the Five Qis origin realm. It was abnormally tragic. In the current situation, continuing to fight would still result in both sides suffering losses. In the end, both sides would probably have to increase their strength. Moon-worshipping sects Yi Shaonan had not made a move yet, nor had the old monsters of the hidden devil lineage. Similarly, on the side of the 5 major sword sects, Windcloud Sword Tomb, and the other sects had not used their full strength. Moreover, when the time came, it would not be a battle between the orthodox and diabolical lineages on Floating Jade Mountain, but a battle between the orthodox and diabolical lineages. Both the diabolical lineages and the orthodox lineages did not want to repeat this pugilistic world catastrophe. Therefore, both sides had agreed to temporarily hold back. Donghuang Tai stood with his hands behind his back and said in a low voice, "If you've had enough, then hand over the demonic creation flag. If you haven't had enough, then fine. The diabolical lineage will still accompany you to the end." Shen Baochen was silent for a moment. Just as everyone thought he would say something, Shen Baochen swung his hand and threw the demonic creation flag to Dong Huangtai. You've already gotten what you want. Leave floating Jade Mountain, or the 5 major sword sects will accompany you to the end. Everyone present was puzzled. Shen Baochen had been too straightforward. He had given the demonic path the demonic creation flag without even saying a word. Was he admitting defeat? However, some knowledgeable warriors agreed with Shen Baochen's actions. In the current situation, there was no point in delaying the handing over of the demonic creation flag. The orthodox lineages had already lost. Since they did not want to fight the diabolical lineages to the end, there was no benefit in continuing to be entangled. It would only increase the number of casualties and become a laughingstock. Dong Huangtai took the demonic creation flag, but there was no joy on his face. He swung the flag, and instantly, demonic chi surged from floating Jade Mountain. Countless diabolical path warriors looked at Dong Huangtai. Dong Huangtaishang waved the demonic creation flag one after another and led countless demonic Dao martial artists down the floating Jade Mountain like a receding tide. Although it seemed like the demonic path won on the surface, the demonic path had actually lost. Therefore, there was no winner on either side. It was a lose-lose situation. This time, the 5 great sword sects wanted to use the good fortune heavenly demon flag to lure the demonic path to take the bait. They wanted to take this opportunity to establish their might and compete for the position of leader of the 5 great sword sections. As a result, the leaders of the 5 great sword sects had yet to be decided, but their might had been established. However, it was not them who established it to the demonic path, but the demonic path. The demonic creation flag had fallen back into the hands of moon-worshipping cult. On the other hand, the demonic lineage that seemed to be in the limelight had successfully obtained the fortune heavenly demon flag. However, this was not a good thing for the moon-worshipping cult or the entire demonic lineage. Ever since the destruction of the Kunlun devil cult, the Devil Dao had been keeping a low profile and hiding their strength. In the end, after the battle at Floating Jade Mountain, a large portion of the demonic Dao's strength had been revealed. This would definitely cause the righteous Dao's warriors to be wary and even view them as enemies. When that time came, the demonic Dao would not be as relaxed as it was now. After all, although the demonic Dao looked easy to bully back then, they had restrained their foundation and were confident enough to do so. Now, the righteous Dao's sects would not continue to allow the demonic Dao to develop as they had in the past. They would either suppress or restrict them. After the great battle at Floating Jade Mountain, everyone was certain that the conflict between the righteous Dao and the demonic Dao would intensify. The underworld would most likely not be peaceful again. Of course, this did not matter to the warriors from the small sects or the lone cultivators present. They were warriors at the bottom of the underworld and could not see that far ahead. As long as they could reap the benefits in front of them, that was enough. Now that the demonic Dao had retreated, the 5 great sword sects should also express their gratitude. It had to be known that this situation had been laid out by the 5 great sword sections. In the end, it had evolved into a war between the righteous Dao and the demonic Dao. The righteous Dao and the demonic Dao could not coexist. Everyone could help the demonic Dao, but for this reason, they had suffered heavy casualties. If the 5 great sword sects did not express their gratitude, wouldn't that be too much? Of course, if the 5 great sword sects were thick-skinned, they could really not express their gratitude. However, if the 5 great sword sects were to do such a thing, would they still want their reputation? Therefore, after Shen Baochen and the other true fire spirit refinement realm warriors left, Han Tingyi cupped his hands at everyone present and said, "Everyone, we are extremely grateful for helping the 5 great sword sects to fight against the demonic Dao together. The 5 great sword sects will send gifts to all the warriors who helped in the great battle at Floating Jade Mountain. Those who successfully killed the demonic Dao warriors will also be heavily rewarded by the 5 great sword sects." The 5 great sword sects foundation was not weak. They could afford to take out some gifts. The most important thing was their attitude. Moreover, for a sect at the level of the Great Light Temple, they did not care about the gifts from the 5 great sword sections. As long as the 5 great sword sects' attitude was sincere, that was enough. However, for those itinerant warriors or warriors from small sects, even if the 5 great sword sects casually took out something, it would be regarded as a treasure. Therefore, these people were very excited. Han Tingyi arranged for people to take the items, while he personally took the treasures that he had prepared beforehand and handed them to the warriors of the various sections. They were distributed according to the number of enemies they killed. Han Tingyi was not afraid that these people would falsely claim the battle merits. Most of the warriors who came from the large sects still cared about their reputation. Moreover, Floating Jade Mountain was only so big. Most people saw who killed who, so it was basically impossible to falsely claim it. Han Tingyi took out a few secret boxes and handed them to the Great Light Temple's Su Yen. He cupped his hands and said, "The Great Light Temple has acted righteously this time. The 5 great sword sects are extremely grateful." Han Tingyi's words were sincere. In this great battle at Floating Jade Mountain, the Great Light Temple was the one who put in the most effort. They practically killed those demonic Dao villains with all their might. In terms of exterminating demons, the Great Light Temple really did not hide anything. However, the losses on the Great Light Temple's side were not small either. Other than Huijin, who was killed by Chu Xiu, the Great Light Temple also lost a warrior at the Unity of Heaven and Man realm, as well as several warriors at the 5 Qis Origin realm and the 3 Flower Summit realm. Su Yen put his palms together and said with a solemn expression, "The Great Light Temple did not act because of so-called loyalty. It was only to exterminate demons and protect the Dao." This time, even if the 5 great sword sects were not in charge and it was the Daoist lineage, the Great Light Temple would also not hold back and kill those demonic Dao villains. Su Yan's words made Han Tingyi feel a little awkward. Su Du chuckled and said, "I say, junior brother, you speak so bluntly. It's very embarrassing." Su Yen glanced at him and said, "A monk does not lie. The people of the Great Light Temple have always been this straightforward. I can't say those polite words that pretend to be polite." With Su Du's interruption, Han Tingyi became even more awkward. He could only throw out a few polite words and immediately turn to the others. When it was Chu Xiu's turn, his reward was also personally handed out by Han Tingyi. This time, Chu Xiu was representing the Guanzhong torture room, so he naturally had the right to be treated like this by Han Tingyi. Looking at Chu Xiu, Han Tingyi's attitude was quite good. He even let Chu Xiu choose his own reward. "Chu, you won 2nd place in the arena this time. The reward for the blood transformation blade is what you deserve. Also, you stood on the side of the orthodox path this time and killed Chou Xiangzi of the 5 Poison sect, eliminating this cruel and ruthless demonic Dao villain. Are you prepared to get medicinal pills or techniques or something else?" Han Tingyi's attitude towards Chu Xiu was naturally not because he appreciated Chu Xiu and saw him in a different light, but because of Chu Xiu's previous attitude. The Guanzhong torture room was not considered the orthodox path or the demonic Dao, but Chu Xiu had stood on their side and even killed Chou Xiangzi, who was quite famous in the 5 Poison sect. In Han Tingyi's opinion, Chu Xiu was a young chivalrous man with a righteous heart. Although his actions were a little extreme, he was still very clear when it came to righteousness. As a martial Dao grandmaster, Han Tingyi naturally would not understand juniors like Chu Xiu in detail. Therefore, he had only heard about them through hearsay. The people of Jianghu all said that Chu Xiu was ruthless and resolute in his actions, but now, the impression of Chu Xiu in Han Tingyi's eyes had been reversed. There was nothing wrong with being ruthless and acting extreme. Which young man was not hot-blooded? The people of Jianghu pursued a quick revenge. As long as they could stand on the side of righteousness, there would be no problem. Chu Xiu cupped his hands and said, "Thank you, Senior Han. Since my reward is the blood-killing saber, why don't Senior Han give me the demonic blood technique that goes with the blood-killing saber?" Han Tingyi frowned and said, "You want the demonic blood technique? It's not that our 5 major sword sects are stingy and don't want to give it to you, but the demonic blood technique is very evil. In battle, it absorbs the opponent's qi and blood and fuses it with demonic energy to enhance its own strength. In this way, it can use the blood-killing saber without limit. This kind of martial art is also an extremely evil path in the demonic Tao. I gave it to you, one is against the harmony of heaven, and the other is also because I am afraid that you will fall into the demonic Tao. Chu Xiu shook his head and said, Senior Han, I have also learned many demonic arts. In my opinion, there are good and evil people, but there are no good and evil martial arts. Even if I cultivate a demonic art, I will use it on the righteous path, using it to kill the demonic Tao. Then it will be a righteous martial art. Moreover, there are many people on the righteous path who cultivate demonic arts. Moreover, Senior Han does not need to worry that I will fall into the demonic Tao. I have cultivated demonic arts before, and aren't I still fine now? As a martial artist, if I am affected by a martial art, then my will is too weak. Nie Donglu, who was familiar with Chu Xiu's character, had an awkward expression when he heard Chu Xiu's words. He sneered in his heart. You, Chu Xiu, have walked all kinds of paths, but you have not walked the righteous path. However, at this time, no one went to undermine Chu Xiu, because that would only offend Han Tingyi and the 5 major sword sects. It would also be easy for Chu Xiu to bite back and slander them. Chapter 409. Chu Xiu's words were filled with righteousness and awe-inspiring, and Han Ting felt that it made some sense. In fact, apart from the more extreme sects like Buddhism, most of the martial arts sects in Jianghu would not use martial arts to restrict a person. Although the martial arts of the demonic path were evil, they had powerful explosive power. Therefore, many warriors secretly learned some demonic martial arts as a trump card. This was a very normal thing. Moreover, the martial arts of the demonic path also included some martial arts from Taoism or Buddhism. How could the two sides be so clearly differentiated? This time, Chu Xiu was on the side of the 5 major sword sects, and his performance was very good. The great demonic blood technique was left in the forgetful sword hut. Other than being sealed in the armory and eating dust, it was useless. Han Tingyi thought about it and threw the 2 martial arts to Chu Xiu. He said in a low voice, Chu, you are a young talent on the Longhu list. Your future is limitless. Although you have learned demonic martial arts, I hope that you will not fall into the demonic path in the future. Chu Xiu nodded and put on a righteous expression. As for what he was thinking in his heart, it was not something that others could know. After the items were distributed, the 5 major sword sects set up a banquet and invited the warriors of the righteous sects present. However, the great battle between the righteous and demonic sects had just ended, and the people of the righteous sects had also seen the power of the rise of the demonic path. They were now busy reporting what had happened here back to their sections. How could they have the time to eat? Therefore, the majority of the people directly bade farewell and left. Chu Xiu was also the same. He didn't want to sit and eat with the martial artists of the righteous path sections. It was estimated that there were many people who didn't like him. After a few days, the details of the great battle on floating jade mountains spread in the Jianghu. Everyone's first impression was that the Jianghu would not be peaceful again. In the past, the demonic path had declined, and the righteous sects had lived comfortably. When they had the time or the opportunity to kill some lone demonic path villains, it was not bad to make a name for themselves. But now, the demonic path had completely risen, and the hidden forces in the past would gradually surface. At that time, the conflict between the righteous and demonic branches would intensify. In short, it would not be a good thing. Of course, the most unlucky among them should be the forgetful sword hut. Even many people in the Jianghu felt pity for the forgetful sword hut. The most outstanding performance in this battle was not Wei Shuya, who was the last survivor of the 9 heavens demons, but East Emperor Tai of the moon-worshipping sect. The demonic moon-worshipping sect was monstrous, and East Emperor Tai was even more amazing. This also allowed the people to see the terror of the moon-worshipping sect. This generation of moon-worshipping cult was even the most powerful generation in the history of moon-worshipping cult. Yi Shaonan was shockingly talented, and his heaven-mending heart sutra was unparalleled under the heavens. He was the most revered person in the martial world, and could be said to be the #1 person of the demonic path. Eastern monarch Tai was the most powerful god magus in the history of moon-worshipping cult. Once he took out the sky-burning mirror, he was able to suppress Du Guli. There was also the most mysterious high priest of the moon-worshipping sect. Although he had only fought a few times, he held the most mysterious and powerful trump card of the moon-worshipping sect. With these 3 people, even if the holy maiden of the moon-worshipping sect had not grown up, the strength of the moon-worshipping sect was shocking enough. Unfortunately, the Forgetful Sword hut happened to be in West Chu, and also happened to be next to the moon-worshipping sect. With such a terrifying neighbor, it was likely that the Forgetful Sword hut would not have an easy time in the future. Chu Xiu did not care about the rumors and disputes in the Jianghu. After leaving Floating Jade Mountain, Mr. Lu sent someone to pass a message to Chu Xiu to return to the Guanzhong torture room on his own. The demonic path had just been in the limelight, and now it was time to deal with it in a low-key manner. So Chu Xiu did not delay and went straight to the Guanzhong torture room. The battle between the righteous and demonic paths on Floating Jade Mountain did not affect the Guanzhong torture room much, so Guan Xiu did not ask too much. Moreover, as Chu Xiu became more and more famous outside, the people in the Guanzhong torture room also tacitly agreed that Chu Xiu was the face of the Guanzhong torture room in the outside world. There were not as many rumors as before. After returning to the Guanxi branch, the Ghost Hand King and Du Guangzhong told Chu Xiu some things that had happened in the Guanxi area recently, and they left directly so that they would not disturb Chu Xiu's cultivation. In fact, during this time, nothing major happened in the Guanxi area. The strength of Chu Xiu's subordinates was already strong enough, at least enough to suppress the Guanxi area. The most important thing was that Chu Xiu's reputation, or rather his ferocious reputation, was also great enough. Even if Chu Xiu was not in the Guanxi area now, the martial arts factions under him would not dare to cause any trouble. In his study, Chu Xiu took out the blood-killing blade and the great devil blood technique that he had obtained from the Sitting Sword hut and studied them carefully. This martial art was a secret technique of the Kunlun devil cult. When the two were combined, there was a total of 7 revolutions. It was definitely not weak. However, after reading it, Chu Xiu finally understood why Han Tingyi had sealed the great devil blood technique and not wanted to hand it over to him. This technique was indeed very evil. The blood-killing blade and the great devil blood technique were actually based on the latter. The function of the great devil blood technique was to use devil qi to control blood. It was not only to control one's own blood, but also the blood of others. During a fight, one could absorb the power of the opponent's qi and blood to replenish one's own qi and blood. It was said to be extremely evil. When practiced to a great level, it was even possible to directly suck the opponent dry. The blood-killing blade, on the other hand, was a technique derived from the great devil blood technique. It condensed a powerful qi and blood into a blade. When the blade was slashed out, the stronger the qi and blood power condensed, the fiercer the power of the blade. Moreover, the blood-killing blade could be used with one's own qi and blood. Naturally, it could also be used with the great devil blood technique. Under normal circumstances, the two worked together. First, the great devil blood technique would successfully absorb the opponent's qi and blood. Then, the blood-killing blade would condense the qi and blood into a blade to kill the enemy. It was powerful and did not consume one's own strength. On the contrary, if one didn't have the great devil blood technique, then the blood-killing blade could only use one's own qi and blood to fight the enemy. Although the power of the blood-killing blade wouldn't be weak, it would still damage one's own body. Thus, one could only use it as a trump card to put one's life on the line. Although these two techniques were very evil, they suited Chu Xiu's taste. Regardless of whether the techniques he cultivated were good or evil, they only pursued one thing, and that was killing power. At this moment, a black mist suddenly rose from Chu Xiu's study. Mei Qinglian, who was wearing a fiery red dress and had an extremely gorgeous temperament, walked out of it. Chu Xiu also discovered that whenever Mei Qinglian saw him, she always seemed to like wearing this fiery red dress. It looked flirtatious but not seductive. Was there something particular about this? Chu Xiu cupped his hands and said, "Saintess, you are so well informed. I just came back and you came to me. Mei Qinglian leisurely walked to the chair beside Chu Xiu and sat down. With a trace of laziness in her voice, she said, "If you don't take the initiative to find me, then I can only take the initiative to find you." Chu Xiu smiled bitterly and said, "I want to come to you, but I don't want to cause a misunderstanding. Master Guan is my superior, after all. I don't want to go to his wife." Mei Qinglian stretched out her slender jade-like finger and pointed at Chu Xiu. She said in disdain, "Don't think that I don't know what kind of morality you men have. What does the wife of a superior count for? Disciple and master? Disciple and master's wife? Don't you like this kind of thing?" Chu Xiu shrugged and said, "Unfortunately, I don't have a master, and I don't have a master's wife." Mei Qinglian sneered, "Fortunately, you don't have a master. Otherwise, your master will die because of you sooner or later." Chu Xiu shrugged and didn't refute. In theory, he didn't have a chance to screw over his master, but he would screw over his father. His cheap father could also be said to have died because of him. After teasing Chu Xiu for a bit, Mei Qinglian's expression turned serious. "Actually, Lu Jin had already sent someone to inform me about the battle between the righteous and demonic paths on Floating Jade Mountain before you returned. Whether it was the Demonic Path Alliance meeting or the Righteous and Demonic Path War, you did well." Chu Xiu's expression didn't change. He said, "Thank you for your praise, Saintess. I'm just doing what I've been entrusted with. Since I represent the Yin Demon sect, I naturally won't embarrass them." Mei Qinglian said in a low voice, "You've also seen the grievances between the Yin Demon sect and the Bright Demon sect during the Demonic Tao Alliance. Previously, you and I had a deal. Now that we're on the same side, I'll formally ask you, are you willing to stand on the side of the Yin Demon sect?" Previously, Mei Qinglian had classified Chu Xiu as a member of the Yin Demon sect, but that was what Mei Qinglian had said, not what Chu Xiu had personally admitted. Now that Chu Xiu had seen the strength of the Yin Demon sect and the Bright Demon sect, and he had also participated in the Demonic Tao Alliance, it was time for Chu Xiu to make his stand. Unlike Mr. Lu, Mei Qinglian had been a very suspicious person from the beginning. Perhaps this had something to do with what had happened to the Yin Demon sect in the past. The Yin Demon sect had fallen to this state, and she, the Saintess, was the only one left. Mei Qinglian couldn't help but be suspicious. Chu Xiu didn't hesitate. He chuckled and said, "In the past, Saintess had said that I belonged to the Yin Demon sect. I have been from the beginning, and I will still be in the future." Mei Qinglian raised her elegant eyebrows and said, "Aren't you tempted after seeing the strength of the Bright Demon sect? Not to mention the others, you've also seen the strength of the moon-worshipping sect. Yi Xiaonan is already a supreme figure in the martial arts world. Eastern Emperor Tai and the moon-worshipping sect's high priest are also extremely terrifying. If you join the moon-worshipping sect, even if you kill Ming Wang Zhongshuan, the moon-worshipping sect will still dare to protect you, let alone killing a martial monk from the Great Light Temple. With your identity as the successor of the Kunlun Devil cult and your ranking on the Longhu list, it won't be difficult for you to join the moon-worshipping sect." Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "I don't have any other good points, but I know my own limits. How big your stomach is, how many bowls of rice you can eat. Otherwise, you will really become an idiot. In the past, when the Kunlun Devil cult was still around, the moon-worshipping sect didn't care about it, let alone now that the Kunlun Devil cult is gone. From the beginning, I knew that I and the moon-worshipping sect are not the same kind of people." You're tuning in to the Han Li's Immortal Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.